Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 307 Pereira versus Roundtree. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as usual, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I spent most of the day watching football and then watching Who's Number One in the big high school wrestling showdown with the best guys. So I'm ready. So I'm pumped up on America and wrestling, and I'm ready to talk about fights, dude. So what's better than that?
I completely agree. It's a perfect way to spend your Sunday.
How's it, and of course, I started with girls softball, but how's things with you, man?
Things are pretty good. Kind of a nice chill day today. Literally, normally you'll never hear someone say this, but during hurricane season, but I'm pretty happy to be in Houston this week. The hurricane that kind of wrecked a lot of the Southeast and even made it up as far as Ohio, where our editor-in-chief lives. It made for nice weather down here on the Gulf Coast. It's been like high 80s, low 90s, low humidity. I am sorry that this comes at the expense of other people that are they're losing their homes, but usually it's us, so I'll take it. Anyway, UFC 307 settling down in Salt Lake City, Utah at the Delta Center. I believe it's called the Delta Center again now. I used to live in Salt Lake. Anyway, two title fights on the docket. Alex Pereira defending against Khalil Roundtree Jr. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about the does he deserve, doesn't he deserve mess that's going on there. The co-main event is a women's bantamweight title fight between Raquel Pennington and Julianna Pena. The two of them and the UFC are doing their absolute best to bring some interest and intrigue to this by talking about who was a mean girl on Tough 18 a million years ago. The two of them have been giving it their best effort at getting some trash talk going. South of that, I'm actually pretty impressed with this card. It's not going to go down as the best pay-per-view of the year on paper. It might not even go down as one of the top three of the year, but it's pretty dang good. For me, Kayla Harrison is appointment viewing until she's either champ or the wheels all fall off. Anytime that Jose Aldo wants to come back and grace us with his greatness once again, sign me up. I got to say that Keith Schillen has been slacking on his job. Those of you who are regulars of this show know that in addition to the Sherdog previews and keeping the streets of Rhode Island safe in that order, his most important job is putting UFC cards in proper order. Therefore, I lay it squarely at the feet of Mr. Schillen that Carla Esparza versus Tecia Pennington is on the early prelims of this card. The disrespect. I'm sure.
I should have put it as the opener. Is that what you're saying?
It's mean of them to make Court McGee and Tim Means open up for them.
What they should have had was Tim Means and Court McGee fighting. Like they go to the break between rounds, and because they're so old and beat up, they just we slide that whole fight in between, and when that fight ends, then the second round starts.
Give McGee and Means like a full 17 minutes in between the first and the second round. It's like I'm completely here for it. Maybe bring him an oxygen tank. I'm old enough. Like I grew up a Skins, now Commanders fan in the Washington D.C. area. I remember when they used to give John Riggins a oxygen mask. In between offensive drives, and Cowboys fans and Giants fans used to scream that it was unfair. It's like, you guys can use an oxygen mask too. Like nobody's stopping you. Anyway, tell you what, if you had to lose one fight from this card, which one would you cut?
Ovince, Preux, and Ryan Spann.
Well, the good news is you probably will lose it. It's already been bumped at least once, so you picked the right one. If you had to reserve one fight on this card that will not fall off no matter what, nobody's going to get injured, nobody's going to have visa issues. Like if you could wrap one fight on this card in bubble wrap and ensure that it makes it to the cage on Saturday, which is the one you're taking?
Dude, this is going to sound like such a cop-out. And it's not the sexiest main event. I just love seeing Alex Pereira fight. Like he is such, like when we think of, like if we made a list of all the things that we hate about MMA, like things, and there's so many things we're like, dude, what is up with this sport? And then you had like a positive. Alex Behead is right at the top of the list. He's like so refreshing. He's so like, yeah, he's just so like, I deal with 14-year-old, 15-year-old girls softball, and I love the kids to death, but I still deal with the 14-year-old, 15-year-old teenage girls. Then there's like one or two girls that you tell them to do something, they never give you attitude. They always do the right thing. They're like super good kids. Like that's how I feel like Alex Behead is to MMA. Like the kid, like you're just so happy they're part of your team.
I completely agree, and we've talked a lot. Like you and I have talked a lot. The MMA fan base and media in general have talked about what a perfect fit it is that he ended up going to Glover Teixeira as basically his mentor ever since he really got serious about MMA about 3 years ago. But we don't talk enough about the fact that Teixeira wouldn't have taken just anybody and given him this kind of attention. Like there are a lot of people who could have, there are a lot of people who did come from other sports with those kind of credentials past age 30 that would not have been as receptive to instruction, would not have been as good as student, would not have been as coachable as Pereira is. And I think a lot of that is due to kind of what he brings. I agree. He has incredible work ethic. He has a native humility to him. And that doesn't mean he doesn't think he's awesome. Like clearly he's very confident in what he does, but there's a humility and a teachability to him that I think has just, it's made for one of the more interesting things to happen in MMA in the entire time that I've been watching it. Like for Pereira to come along and accomplish what he has in the time he has with the limitations and the strengths that he has is one of the more interesting things I've ever seen happen.
Have you ever, besides his opponents, have you ever found someone who disliked him? Like how like fans were like, oh, I can't stand this guy. And you're just like, what? Why? You can't stand that guy?
Dude,
like
even Izzy doesn't hate him. Like,
no.
They're competitive guys, but then they're Izzy's shooting video of him and Pereira running into each other at the airport, 2 days later. Yeah.
So it's a Larry and Magic kind of type situation where they were bitter rivals. The team hated when they first started. It was like the most hated. And then the rivalry became so good that they started liking each other, and then they just get put together all the time. Like you can't mention, you talk about the all-time great list. Yeah. Like you never hear someone say, "Oh, I'll put Magic Johnson in my top 5," and then I'll put Larry Bird. Like he'll be in my top 25. They just always sing together. When you're naming your list of best players, you're like, "Oh, my top 10." Then you'll be like, "Yeah, Magic and Larry." You always just put them together like that. So
that's a good way to put it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I mean, Frazier always hated Ali for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like that.
No, I love Alex Behead. I love everything about him. And I mean, it's not the greatest matchup, and we'll get to that later on and whatnot, but it just seems big when he fights.
Yes.
But my one knock on it is that's in Salt Lake City. And it's not that I mean, being in Salt Lake City, it's really weird that that's become a hotbed for MMA. Like it's on, and I know the reasons why they go there, but contractual obligations and whatnot. But he has become such a star that he keeps getting these big ones: Madison Square Garden, UFC 300, International Fight Week, and you're like October in Salt Lake City.
October in Salt Lake City.
It feels like when Conor fought in Boston against who's the German guy there? I can't think of his name.
Dennis Seaver.
Dennis Seaver on a Sunday afternoon after it was on a Sunday, or maybe it was a Saturday. It might have been a Saturday, but it was like NFL playoff football was on, and it was just like, this guy's the biggest star in sport. Like, this is such a weird matchup.
And I mean, sending Boston, it was the right idea because you got plenty of people, Irish.
Yeah, he fought Holloway there.
It was just Spann was wrong.
It needed to be a pay-per-view. It couldn't be in a fight night. That's how I felt. Like that, everything else is, they have the wrong opponent and the wrong stadium, but still, it's just special. I feel like there's certain people about sports that I don't follow tennis, but who's Serena Williams?
Yeah,
if you were a tennis fan, you got a chance to see Serena Williams live, and it wasn't a U.S. Open, but it was the, I don't know, Toyota Classic, and she's playing the 900th person in the world. You're still excited because just, holy shit, I could see Serena Williams. If you're a big tennis fan, that's kind of how I feel about Alex Pena. And he probably hits like Serena Williams swinging a tennis racket. So.
Yeah, it's hard for me to argue with that one, because here's the thing. Again, we'll get to the deserved discussion later, but this is probably going to be a fun fight.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's probably going to be more enjoyable than any Magomed Ankalaev fight has ever been. So
yeah, absolutely. So other than like Iwan Kutalaba matchups, the build up this week won't be as exciting. Like other people are going to have to sell this. Whether it's, I think they're going to try. Raquel Pennington and especially Julianna Pena. Julianna Pena will try to sell this card.
Yeah,
I think Kayla Harrison, at the presser, if she can get into it with
Ketlen Vieira. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, not even Kayla. No, she gets into it with like Julianna Pena.
Oh, I mean,
somebody else.
She's saying the right things. She said like 2 days ago, it's only a matter of time before I'm UFC champ.
Yeah. If they can get that going in the press conference, Joaquin Buckley will talk. He's got the wrong opponent really to talk with, but Joaquin Buckley will say things.
Nobody's told him that, because he's starting to say some shit about Stephen Thompson.
Yeah, it's like saying bad things about Mr. Rogers. Like what are you doing? If Mr. Rogers didn't play with puppets instead of kick people in the face.
Yeah, like Joaquin Buckley out there like letting the air out of the tires on the church bus. Just messing.
But I'll say this: when the card was getting announced, I wasn't super excited, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is not the especially the main events and stuff." But I feel like you ever been to a Pizza Hut during and you show up and you're like, "Man, I'm about to get some stuff across," and you're all excited, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, there's a $9.99 buffet of pizza going on," and you're like, damn, they start eating it and you get more and more. When you go down this card, it's deep. So it's not the best pizza, but like it's deep, man. You get like 10, all you can eat 10 slices, get some cheesy bread on the side. Like
you're gonna need to go home and take a nap.
Yeah, I'm excited. So like it's just a deep card.
Yep. That's UFC 307 deep dish. That's what we're calling this one. Cold pizza buffet. Yeah, cold pizza. Any other general thoughts about this one before we dive into these prelims?
No, let's do it.
All right. First up on the prelims from Salt Lake City is a welterweight matchup between two grizzled veterans, to say the least, as Court McGee and Tim Means square off. McGee, the 39-year-old Utahn, they had to get one in there. 21-13 overall. 10-11 since joining the UFC as the middleweight winner of the 11th season of The Ultimate Fighter. He's 10-11 in the UFC overall. He is 6-9 at welterweight, and he's on a 3-fight losing streak stretching back a little over 2 years. He fought most recently back in April at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Curtis 2, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Alex Morono. He's going to look to snap that streak, turn things around late in his career against Means. 40-year-old New Mexico native is 33-16-1 with one no contest overall. He is 15-13 with one no contest across two separate stints in the UFC. He's 13-11 with one no contest since being back. He is coming in off a loss. He got knocked out in the first round by Uroš Medic back in April at UFC on ESPN, Nicolau versus Perez. Prior to that, he did have a win. He picked up a third round TKO of Andre Fialho just a little over a year ago. Odds here favor Means pretty strongly. He's -210. McGee +180 coming back. I like both these guys on a human level. Both of them are probably future candidates for the Hall of Fucking Awesome a year after they retire, whenever that is. Just two overachievers. Two guys that both can tell you a little bit about coming back, not just in the context of a fight, but just coming back in life after living hard.
Two guys that could be dead.
Yeah, two guys. Well, Court McGee was dead. Tim Means spent a couple years in prison after his MMA career started, came back from that, and has become not only a productive, law-abiding member of society, a happy family man, but has had a pretty quietly impressive pro fight career since then. Neither of these guys are the type that you would have pegged to be still among the top 60 or 70 fighters in their weight class as they push 40 or push past 40, but nonetheless, here they are. The difference maker to me in this fight is that both of them are clearly shop worn, but McGee seems to be entirely shot. Means has lost 4 of his last 5. So on paper, he's not like he's doing that much better than McGee. But if you watch the actual fights, Means is still competitive from one round to the next, where, McGee, you have to go back over 2.5 years for his last win. And since then, he has 2 ugly first round knockouts, neither of them to world beaters. And then his loss to Morono, I say this with all the love in the world. Alex Morono is a friend of mine. He's my teacher, but Morono looked terrible in that fight, and he still swept the whole thing. McGee just, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is old. That's what it looks like to me. Also stylistically, probably not a great matchup, because McGee's always been at his best, just mauling people in the clinch, making him wear his weight, either just making lives miserable from there or taking people down from there. A pretty decent top game and some ground and pound was kind of the last UFC level skill set I felt he had. And even that, it didn't last long enough to find out against Matt Brown or Jeremiah Wells. And we saw precious little of it against Morono, but all of those things would require him to spend lots of time in the clinch with Means. And that's also pretty much the last place where Means is really dangerous. I'm expecting this is going to make it to the final horn, just because 1, both of these guys are tough as nails, and 2, Means has always been more of an opportunistic and attrition-based finisher, even in his prime. He's not in his prime anymore. I'm expecting that Means is probably just going to win all 3 rounds here. There might even be some times when he gets McGee pretty hurt, pretty worn down, and just can't quite pour it on enough to get the finish. So give me Means by unanimous decision, sweeping all 3 rounds in a fight that's pretty depressing if you're a Court McGee booster. Just kind of a decent opener to a pay-per-view otherwise.
Yeah. It's funny. These guys probably feel really connected to each other based on their journeys and everything. And I hope this is the last we see of Court McGee, win or lose. If he loses, it's it'd be another bad loss. But if he wins, what would be a better way for him to win in his hometown? He's not going to win many fights left in the UFC, and this is definitely a winnable fight. The front is stylistic. Court McGee is old, but even in his prime, he was never a great athlete. He's a wrestle boxer, but the thing is, this dude has really slowed. His hands are slow. He still has volume. I'll give him that. But his game is formed on being able to eat shots and continue to take ground. I'm just worried if his chin can still do that. Now, he still throws some tight shots. I like his straight right. I like that he targets the body. He still has some pop. That's usually the last thing to go. But he showed power against Claudio Silva and Ramiz Brahimaj. But these fights are starting to go back a little bit. These are, I think, 4 or 5 fights ago.
Yeah.
He's a very physically strong guy. Like, we've talked about this before. Like,
yep. Pound for pound, hardest handshake in the sport.
Yeah, like there's no doubt when he puts a nail in, like most people do, like the little soft tap, and they hit like 3 or 4 times before he goes up. He hits it one time, and that nail's going into the, when he's laying deck down or something. Obviously he will wrestle, but I do think his wrestling is overrated, and especially at this point of his career. But he gets the fight to the ground. He has adjusted some things. Like, he forces opponents back to the cage, and he shoots where they can't sprawl, which obviously takes a little less explosion, more power. It's more about like how much can I pull, like I bet you he's great at like low row machine where you just grab and just pull as much weight possible. Like, he's there's no doubt that he's like doing the entire rack as he's doing that. He's hard to take down himself. If he gets on top, he's got a good top game. He will control and grind. I've seen him stall on top, and I can see that happening here. He's not much of a submission threat. We talked about this before. He hasn't got a sub since 2010, but he does have good submission defense. But the biggest concern at this point is just can his chin hold up? And he's been back-to-back fights. He got knocked out. To means he's a southpaw. He's also like a terrible athlete, but he's long and lengthy. He's pretty intelligent. He kind of knows where his weaknesses are and tries to get himself in the best position to win. Kind of similar to Court McGee. He's a counter striker, high guard defense, good volume. He's a builder. He doesn't go to slow down, and he gets stronger as the fight goes on, which I like. He'll march down his opponent and throw bombs. He has more power than people believe. He's not going to start you with one punch, but you've seen him wreck guys up faces. He's got a good kicking game, teep kicks, calf kicks. He likes to throw kicks and then follow them into the pocket, where he's like the guy I use a lot to be tall man who wants to get inside. He's got legendary knees inside. I think I'm using the word legendary loosely, but that's what it's something he's known for. How about that?
Yeah.
He will sneak in a takedown. He likes like the traditional over underhook, and then kind of pinch the knee to like a trip or kind of like a knee tap. I was surprised though, like when every time I'm about to give up to him, he'll have a good showing, but then there's times he just has like terrible shows. Like he had a terrible showing against Alex Moreno. Alex Moreno subbed him quick. He's been in a lot of wars, so it could be something that he just overnight goes. I mean, his chin seemed to be falling apart against Max Griffin. So I'm not high on either at this point of their career. If this was their prime, I would take McGee, but I think mean striking still has more weapons. His kicks, his knees. That's not something that McGee, he really just has a boxing and like a shoot on your hips when you're near the cage game. I actually think, the crowd is going to be on his side, and maybe he can dig deep and have one, big hurrah. I think about like Joe Lazon's last win in Boston. Can he have one of those moments? But I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say Means stops him. I don't think Means should be as big a favorite as you think. I think at this point his career shouldn't be that big a favorite for anybody, but give me Means by second round TKO.
Next up on the UFC 307 prelims is a light heavyweight contest between Ryan Spann and Ovince St. Preux. This fight was actually scheduled to take place at the Burns versus Brady fight night a couple weeks ago on September 7th. We previewed it at that time. The odds are exactly the same. Spann is still a prohibitive favorite. Keith, unless you have anything that's changed drastically for you in the last couple weeks, I'm just going to run that footage.
There's no way I'm talking about this fight twice.
Oh, there you go. Sit tight. Enjoy this ancient VHS found footage, and we'll be back in just a minute. Spann, the 33-year-old Texan, is 21-10 overall. He is 7-5 in the UFC, and he's on a 3-bout losing streak, stretching back over the last 18 months. Over that time, he has a submission loss to Nikita Krylov, a decision loss to Anthony Smith, and most recently, against Bogdan Guskov back in April, a second-round knockout loss that's surprised me anyway. So Spann looking to bounce back from the longest losing streak of his career, prove that he has anything to offer this division going forward. And in order to do so, he will need to get past Ovince St. Preux. St. Preux, 41-year-old Tennessean, is 27-17 overall. He's 15-12 in the UFC, 15-12 overall, 15-10 at light heavyweight. He did have a brief and unsuccessful foray into the heavyweight division a couple years ago, but he's been back at light heavyweight for a while now, and he's coming in off a win. He picked up a split decision over Spann's teammate fellow gigantic dude and primary sparring partner Kennedy Zechukwu back at the same Tuivasa versus Tybura fight night in March, where several fighters on this card last appeared. Despite the fact that St. Preux is coming in off of a win and Spann off of 3 losses, Spann is a strong favorite. He's minus 350, St. Preux plus 275 coming back. I know what it's going to look like if Ovince St. Preux upsets Ryan Spann. It will probably look a little bit like St. Preux beating Zechukwu, where he just somehow dragged a bigger, younger, less shop-worn fighter into an Ovince St. Preux fight. It's wild that he's still in the UFC at all. As a 41-year-old whose game really did run on top-notch athleticism at his best. I mean, this is a guy that was a fixture in the light heavyweight top 10 for years and fought for an interim title. Like, he was the guy that welcomed John Jones back. It's a game that's utterly unique. Like, he has one of the most unique skill sets and approaches in the history of the sport, at least for this high level of fighter. But he's a guy that I never thought would still be winning fights, even against bottom tier opposition in his 40s. But here he is, and he has a clear route to victory against Spann. St. Preux is a huge light heavyweight himself. Like, when he was first coming up, when he came to the UFC out of the acquisition of Strikeforce in like 2010 or whatever it was, he was huge for light heavyweight. Like, he's not the tallest one, but of the ex-football players in the UFC, he's the one that looks like it. He's still big by modern standards, though. I mean, Zechukwu was way bigger than him. Spann will be way bigger than him. I don't understand how St. Preux's game is still beating people, because even at his best, he was a low volume guy that had a tough time winning rounds unless he caught him with something and hurt him real bad or finished him. His offense consists of like haymakers and head kicks. His ground game for a long time consisted of shooting takedowns on terrified opponents, and then when they tried to guillotine him, he would shoulder choke them. And he eventually got to the point where he had setups for that thing. I mean, the last one he got in the UFC, who was it? Oh, Marcos Rogerio de Lima, where Marcos Pizarro didn't even do the ill-advised guillotine. Like, OSP trapped his arm and slapped a Von Preux choke on him. It was wild. I don't think he's going to do any of those things to Ryan Spann. I haven't completely given up on Ryan Spann. He's still just 33 in a division where, well, look no further than his opponent. You can function well into your late 30s. So Spann's still got time to turn things around, but it's been discouraging to see his last couple of fights, because if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said he looks like he's starting to turn a corner. He'd been on a good run where his only losses were a loss to Johnny Walker that should have been a disqualification win probably, and a loss to Anthony Smith, who, especially in 2021, just a super wily veteran and super sneaky, opportunistic submission grappler on the ground. But aside from that, Spann just seemed to be on a pretty impressive run. But instead of getting better, he's got some of the same bad habits still. Like defensive lapses that get him caught on the feet, even by people who are like smaller and slower than he is. I think my problem might just be that I'm misclassifying him. He's such a huge guy with such a long wingspan, and does try to throw strikes to take advantage of his huge frame. But really, he gets outstruck a lot of the time. Like, he's still defensively porous. Like, smaller people can still get inside his kicking range. Like, where he's at his best is guillotining people that he hurts and like that he hurts or frightens and that shoot on him. I don't think Ovince St. Preux going to do that. Can't both these guys lose this fight? I'm like,
go with the drop.
I can see like both these guys are in enough weird fights that I can see like a point deduction for something weird and it ends up in a draw. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this, but I will take Spann by decision. Like if Spann can get past the one moment each round where St. Preux throws something that could really hurt him badly, he should be able to kind of cruise to an uneventful win here in a lousy fight. So that's what I'm picking. But with a guy as inconsistent as Spann against a guy as shopworn as St. Preux, I have no confidence in it at all. Spann by decision.
Yeah, dude, I don't really care about this fight. I mean, St. Preux is. Both these guys are what they are at this point. I mean, I will say this. I can't believe I'm saying this in 2021, but it looked actually pretty good against Kenny and Chukwu. Like the fight was actually way more entertaining. He did better. He still showed he has the crafty veteran. I thought he lost all athleticism and I still think he's not a great athlete anymore. They'll talk about all his college football days, but I was pleasantly surprised with his output. It was much better than I expected, and especially the way he's fought. He's got like that lately. He's had that Andrei Arlovsky slow output, staring contest thing going. He's a counter striker that loves his feedback left hand. He likes to work the body. He has decent pop. He showed some power against Njoku a few times. Hurt him, buckled him a couple times, dropped him. I think he dropped. I don't know if he dropped him or. I remember hurting him a couple of times, which was really surprising. He's got a big kicking game. He throws a lot of kicks. I obviously I'm really worried about all the damage he's taken over the years, and he has been stopped, a bunch recently. Which he's always been a very good grappler. He can sneak in and take down. He obviously has that Von Flue, aka Von Preux choke as his specialty. Spann's a big dude. When you see the guy, he's huge, long, lengthy guy. He's a technically sound striker. A little bit low output though, so I'm kind of hoping St. Preux brings a fight to him, and it's not a really low distance kickboxing fight. He has, I don't know if he has big power because I think I gave him that note because he knocked out Dominic Reyes with a jab, but I think that might. Probably says more about Reyes than it does about Spann's power. Spann just looks like he should be able to crack guys. He does a lot of looping punches, especially that looping left hand. He's also very good at beating opponents to the point of contact. He has that Alistair Overeem thing going for him where everyone thinks of him as a striker, but he's probably a better grappler. I mean, he's got 11 subs on his record, but you mentioned it. It's that fantastic guillotine. It's one of the best in. And I know you mentioned it hasn't happened in a while, but it's still there. I mean, he subbed Iwan Kutalaba with it. He almost subbed Sam Alvey with the standing triangle choke. He subbed Nikita Krylov. So I still think it's there. His sub defense isn't the best though. I mean, he was recently subbed by Anthony Smith, which was really concerning for a guy, and then obviously led to this streak we're on. Man, like I do think Spann wins. The problem is, I think we might get that low kickboxing distance kickboxing match, and it's going to be ugly. And give me Spann, and I think we're going to get tortured. Give me Spann by decision.
We head next to the strawweight division for a matchup between Carla Esparza and Tecia Pennington. Esparza, the 36-year-old Californian, is 19-7 overall. She is 10-5 since joining the UFC out of the 20th season of The Ultimate Fighter. She won that season, of course, to be crowned the inaugural UFC strawweight champ. That was immediately after being crowned the inaugural Invicta strawweight champ. So a pioneer in every sense of the word, finally winding down to the end of her storied career. She has talked about this being her last fight. She's been off for nearly 2 years having a baby. So unlike a lot of MMA retirements, sounds like this one might stick. She will have a last chance at a last win against a familiar face in Pennington. 35-year-old from Fall River, Massachusetts, by way of Florida. 13-7 overall. 9-7 since joining the UFC, also out of season 20 of The Ultimate Fighter. She fought most recently in May, dropping a split decision to Tabitha Ricci. Prior to that, she had not fought in over 2 years. You have to go all the way back to April of 2022 for her split decision loss to Mackenzie Dern. So she'll be looking to snap a 2-fight losing streak. These two have met before. They fought on Tough 20. It was literally over 10 years ago. So it might be a little too much to try to draw conclusions about their current competitive status from that fight. But for what it's worth, Esparza won a majority decision, got Pennington, at the time Torres, down a few times, and it was a fight on Tough 20. Odds here favor Pennington just slightly. She's minus 180, Esparza plus 150. I mean, 10 years ago, this was about as pure a clash of styles as you could imagine. Esparza was very much a one-dimensional wrestling specialist. Pennington, not quite as one-dimensional, but by preference, a high-volume, just speed demon striker. Both of them were, even at the time, about as short a woman as you can find in that division. That's still the case today. I mean, they're both 5'1". They've both improved quite a lot since then. I mean, both of them are probably on the downslide at this point physically, but Pennington became more and more well-rounded over the course of her career, at least up until a couple of years ago. When she put together that 3-fight win streak in 2020 and 2021, ending with the win over Angela Hill, I thought her takedown defense was improved, and that just opened things up for her as a striker. And at least at that time, she seemed as good as she ever was physically. I mean, you look at her, she's absolutely jacked. She is a little speed demon that has always been a kind of high volume, low power striker, even by the standards of strawweight. Esparza, I think her striking definitely improved over the years. I mean, it never became great, but it became good enough that she could win fights without having to take her opponent down 7 or 8 times. Obviously, she's still at her best as a wrestler, but I think as things went along, it became harder and harder for her to make that go against top strawweights just because of her size disadvantage. I mean, she won 6 fights in a row and made her way to a title shot. It was a great story, but she was a huge underdog to Wei Li Zhang, and then the fight turned out exactly like I think everybody thought it was going to. Just Zhang was too big, too strong. There was no safe place for Esparza. She couldn't take Zhang down if she wanted to. Zhang took her down, had no fear of anything, just like beat the piss out of her. I like these two meeting at this point in their careers. I almost wish it were a double retirement fight. I mean, at this point, Pennington's had at least one baby. Esparza's had one. The big unknown here to me is what Esparza is going to look like. Like, she hasn't fought in almost.
She'll be short.
Well, if she's a different height, then we definitely need to get USADA or somebody in here. Like, what's she been taking? But what she's going to look like, yes, physically, and then just, yeah, she's 36 years old. She hasn't fought in almost 2 years. The last time she fought, she got absolutely wrecked. Knowing that this is her last fight, is she just doing this because she wants one more payday, because she wants one more win, because those aren't the same thing? I guess I would lean towards this fight being close to a pick'em if both these women had fought 4 months ago, but I feel like I have a much better handle on what Tecia Pennington is going to look like on Saturday, and I don't for Esparza. And if Esparza surprises us, it's almost certainly going to be a negative surprise where she looks rusty, she looks out of shape. Just even if she's just rusty to the point where she can't get in gear and Pennington wins an easy first round against her, this being a 3-round fight, that might be all it takes. For that reason, I'm going Pennington by decision here. I'm going to say we actually get a pretty good Carla Esparza, but just the takedowns are not a given anymore. Pennington does enough of being on her horse, sprawling and brawling, and we get a surprisingly fun but straightforward win for Pennington.
Yeah, these guys, Carla Esparza. I do think that we might have a double retirement. I wouldn't be surprised if Tecia's. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call her. I was going to call it Tecia Torres, Tecia Pennington. If she announces that she's going to retire too, like I wouldn't surprise, especially like where she is in her career, where her wife is in their career. Like it seems like she could be a supportive partner right now. I really hate that they're fighting in the same card. Obviously, they both win. It's a nice moment, but to me, it's just so much distractions. I know they. I mean, I guess if you're in the same camp all the time, then it's probably a good thing, and you're both dieting at the same time. So I guess it's some positives. I would. I mean, imagine if like Tecia Torres goes to the hospital and then she's not there, like to get to watch her her spouse fight. So I don't know, but I'm not them, so they obviously it's their decision. I'll say this about Carla Esparza. It kind of like last time, seeing her fight. I met Carla Esparza once, and we talked for a few minutes, and it was actually right her last fight when she's going to fight Weili Zhang, and we talked. And I usually never I really only talk to fighters if they're fighting on a card during the media thing. But we just happened to be in the same place and same time, and like I actually started talking to her husband first. So she's really cool. Like she's really like super cool. She isn't going to be a fan favorite anywhere. Like no one's going to talk about like, oh, remember that Carla Esparza fight? But I liked her a lot. So the issue with Carla Esparza is always been, that she was a one-dimensional fighter, but she accomplished a lot. She was a 2-time UFC champion, being a pretty much one-dimensional fighter. She her striking was never good. She throws a lot of single strikes, a lot of looping strikes. She lacks power. Her striking was always to set up takedowns. Now she's a good wrestler, though sometimes she'll just kind of like dive down into the ground, head down, which is an issue. But she gets a lot of takedowns. She gets her opponent's hits. She cuts the corner well. She chain wrestles well. Of course, I'm talking about good Carla Esparza, but it could be, I think it was 2 years since we last saw her, so it could be completely different. And obviously, body changes when you have a baby and all that. So who knows? But she is relentless to get to the fight of the ground, though. When she gets on the hips, she's good. Also, like reactionary doubles. If you over pursue, trying to like if you're hurt on the feet and you go after her, or you extend on your shots, she'll drop down. She got good top game. Moves better. On top, like she'll slowly work. She has no problems. She won't wrestle position. She has no issues stalling on top. Despite having this like very heavy wrestling style, she doesn't really get tired. Her style more tires out her opponents. Tecia, on the other hand, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if this is end up seeing her. I mean, she's up there in age too. This is a girl. I always make a joke. She's from New England, though she's got connections to Florida and Colorado. And you said she's from Fall River, Mass. She's from Fall River, as they say. Did you know this, Ben? I'm going to give you a Fall River trivia. Do you know the biggest, longest bridge in the world is in Fall River? I
did not know that.
Yeah, you ask anybody. This is a New England joke. Fall River is like the ultimate. I grew up in a Portuguese neighborhood. Fall River is the ultimate Portuguese neighborhood, and everyone always says it's called the Braga Bridge, and they say it connects America to Portugal.
No,
so there's your New England. There's a little New England humor for you. So it's not. I don't really know what the longest bridge in the world. It's not the Braga Bridge. Anyways, so Tecia, she's a good athlete. She still moves well. Last fight she still moves well. She can fight out both stances. Tons of volume. She's one of the ones she moves. She stays on the outside, and then suddenly she crashes in and blitzes. Fast hands, attacks with combinations. She never had power. I mean, just look at her. She's so small. I mean, I feel like Tecia Torres, guys, I'm sorry. It's so used to calling Tecia Torres. Tecia Pennington. If there was an atomweight division, we might be talking about a legendary fighter. Like, we might be talking about her like imagine if there was never men's flyweight. How would we talk about Demetrius Johnson?
Oh, he was a top 10 guy for a bunch of years. Like, it's pretty impressive considering how small he was. That's exactly how we would talk about him.
Yeah. Like Tecia Torres.
Yeah.
And like, if there was, and I'm not saying Michelle Waterson was an atomweight. There's a bunch of other people, but my point is, if there was an atomweight division, she could have been the star. I really believe that she probably would have been the best. Good kicking game. She loves ending combos with kicks. She likes to strike and then get into the clinch. Though, even though she's undersized, she does well in the clinch. She has some judo throws inside the clinch. She doesn't wrestle much from the outside, but she's hard to take down because she's always kind of like, she's like a moving target. You know, she's got some solid takedown defense. If you take her down, she's really good at just popping back up if she's taken down. And she's also got the cardio to go hard the entire fight. I really want, and this is not it's not my anti-New England MMA stance or anything like that. Even though, I mean, I joke about, her from Fall River. It's like, whatever. Like, she's
the greatest fighter ever from Fall River. She's ahead of Tom Lawler now. Like,
I used to live in Fall River for a little while, just for like 6 months. But obviously Carla Esparza accomplished more in the sport. I think her retirement party might get ruined. I think Torres should be much faster. She has better volume. She's fought more recently, though that's not saying much because she has not been obviously active at all. But I think she might stuff some takedowns, and if she especially against the cage, if she can not get taken down against the cage, I think her volume in kicks from distance might give her the win. And I'm going to say that's what happens. I'm going to say Tecia Torres ruins the retirement party and she wins by, we'll say close. We'll say Carla has some moments. We'll say split decision.
Lightweights are up next at UFC 307 as Alexander Hernandez faces off against Austin Hubbard. Hernandez, the 31-year-old Texan by way of Colorado, is 14-8 overall. He is 6-7 in the UFC. Worth noting that he is 6-5 at lightweight. He is coming into this fight off of a 2-fight experiment at featherweight, which saw him go 0-2 and miss weight once. Clearly, he's rethought that whole plan, and just a few days shy of his 32nd birthday, he will be 32 by the time the fight takes place. He is back at 155 pounds. He fought most recently back in April at the same Allen versus Curtis 2 card that a couple other people on Saturday's card were on. He dropped a split decision to Damon Jackson. That's the fight where Hernandez blew weight. He is going to look to get back in the win column here against Hubbard. 32-year-old Colorado native is 16-7 overall. He is 4-5 across 2 separate stints in the UFC. He's 1-1 since being back. He was re-signed a little over a year ago. Since then, he has a submission loss to Kurt Holobaugh, and in his most recent appearance back in April, a unanimous decision win over Michal Figlock. Odds here favor Hernandez, favor him pretty strongly. He is -210, Hubbard +180 coming back. Keith, I'm going to flip this to you first. Hernandez, 2-1 favorite. Are you feeling that? How do you think this fight plays out?
Yeah, you know what? You asked in the beginning what fight would I eliminate off the card if I had to, and I said Spann and St. Preux, and I still would. This is probably my second one. It's a better action fight than Means and Court McGee, but at least there's like some kind of backstory to that one. These guys, they kind of are what they are at this point. What was the question you asked me?
How do you think the fight's going to go?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I mean, Hernandez, he's a solid boxer. He's got pretty fast hands. He's accurate. He's good at measuring his foes. He attacks with combinations, mixes punches to the body, and then to the head together well, which I like. He does like dart in, land some shots, and get out of range. He has some power, but I do think it's overrated. Like the commentary team's going to make it seem like he's like, a guy just starches people. That's not true. And because he loads up so much, he kind of gasses. We saw that against Billy Quarantillo. Quarantillo put a pace on him and just sucked the life out of him. Now, I feel much better with him back at 155 than when he was at 145. Like that was obviously a failed experiment. He's got good kicks. I like his kicking game. He does mix up punches and kicks together well, but he doesn't check leg kicks. I mean, go back to the Damian Jackson fight. Jackson like chopped up his leg in that fight. He'll sneak in a takedown, and he's a decent grappler, pretty good at winning scrambles, but he's a weak defensive wrestler. Hubbard, he's a big lightweight. He isn't a great athlete. He's an okay striker. He has a lot of defensive issues. He drops his hands. He keeps his chin high in the air. He pulls his head straight back. He does throw some good combinations though, tight combinations. But he can load up a little bit. He's got okay power. Some sting. Solid kicks though. I like his teep kicks. I like his step and knee. Go back to like the Mark Madsen fight. You heard him with that. He has some good low kicks. He is heavy on his front leg, which makes him open to calf kicks himself. He can sneak in a takedown. Like I think he's actually a better wrestler than he gets credited for. Like he out wrestled Kyle Prepoli. He out wrestled Aaron McKenzie like on the Ultimate Fighter show. So that's pretty good. If he's taken down, good get-up game. Like Mark Madsen, a very decorated wrestler. And of course, and I've said this a million times, he's not Olympic silver medal. He's not the second best guy in the world, but obviously still has credentials. Struggled to keep him down. If he's on top, he beat up Aaron McKenzie with some good ground and pound. Obviously, I'm worried about his submission events. He was recently subbed by Kurt Holobaugh. So this is tough because what'd you say the bet lines were?
Hernandez is minus 210. Hubbard plus 180.
Wow, yeah. I'm surprised by that. I expect this to be a pick'em. I'm sorry that I always have to say what's the bet line because a lot of times I'm kind of rearranging my thoughts on what I want to say. I've kind of quit on Hernandez. Obviously Vegas hasn't, but I don't think he's that good anymore. And to be honest, he probably was never that good to begin with. I don't trust his cardio either. Yeah, even at 155, obviously I like it better than 145, but it's something I'm worried about. I think Hubbard might drop the first round, but I think his wrestling and his volume and he's got a little grit to him. I think that might take over late. I think he might win the last two rounds. Give me Hubbard. I'm going to take the upset. Give me Hubbard by decision.
And I like the pick there. Like when you say that you've given up on Hernandez, like you and I have been doing these shows together long enough that I know what you mean by that. You don't mean that he's never going to win another fight as long as he fights, but you
hope that he's going to be a contender or hope that he's going to be a be what we thought he was.
Sure. I mean, he landed in the UFC at this point over 6 years ago. So he was like 25 years old at the time, lamped Beneil Dariush. Yeah. And we were all like, oh, what have we got here?
Yeah.
6 years later, we know what we've got.
Who got a lucky one over Beneil Dariush.
I've asked myself, because he's a Texas guy, I've asked myself, why isn't Alexander Hernandez better? Because you just described him. Like he is a big, strong lightweight. He's a plus athlete. I mean,
he looks the part. He looks the part.
He absolutely does. And he's got the Dustin Poirier build where the tail of the tape doesn't tell you how big this dude is. And just like Dustin Poirier, it was a silly experiment to try to cut to 145.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and at least offensively, he's at least decent at everything. Like there's nothing he's terrible at offensively. So why isn't he a better fighter? Why is he under 500 in the UFC? And the best thing I can compare him to, if we can go back, not old school, but go back maybe 15 years, he reminds me of Josh Berkman. Josh Berkman was a plus athlete, college, like small college running back, explosive athlete, hard hitter, capable of wrestling, capable of snatching a submission if the opportunity presented itself. And he was basically a 500 guy in the UFC until he got old, and then he was an under 500 guy in the UFC. Like you can kind of see Hernandez going that same way. And I think the issue is the same in both cases. There are a little bit of a problem with durability and cardio. And it's not terrible fight IQ, but just not quite good enough. Like if there's one fighter making adjustments between rounds and getting stronger from round to round, it's usually Hernandez's opponent. Quarantillo did it to him. Bill Algeo did it to him. Damon Jackson didn't have to because he came out with a better plan right off the bat. You know, he just started kicking his legs. All of that, if I were a betting man, would make me nervous about taking Alexander Hernandez as a 2-1 favorite. And this feels kind of like a pick'em-ish fight to me. And I'm with you. I'm going to go with Hubbard. We've talked about Salt Lake City before. They will talk about the altitude at Salt Lake City. It's not that high. It's not Tibet. Yeah. It's not even Mexico City. It's like 4,500 feet. But yeah, give me Hubbard to win the second and third rounds. I'm feeling that as well. Yeah, and I guess that's a moderate upset.
Yeah, consensus pick. Yeah, I didn't even think about altitude. I mean, like you said, it's not way up there, but it actually makes my pick even more confident.
Yeah, and Hernandez is now training at Factory X, so he is at Denver Elevation, but that's been for the last couple of years where Hubbard's been with Elevation Fight Team for forever. So, and that will be something that Hubbard can tell his grandkids, because right now, I said that Hubbard is 4-5 in the UFC. His 4 wins have 0 UFC wins between them. Like, it's as bad a 4-5 as you can get. If he beats Hernandez, he'll finally have a win over somebody with some UFC wins. So hooray for him. Next up, middleweights take the cage as Cesar Almeida faces off against Ihor Potieria. Almeida, the 36-year-old Brazilian, is 5-1 overall. He's 1-1 since joining the UFC out of season 7 of Dana White's Contender Series. He won on the Contender Series last August, made his debut this April, knocking out Dylan Budka in the second round, came back in June at UFC 302 and dropped a split decision to Roman Kopylov. That was his first UFC loss, his first professional loss in MMA. Most importantly, at least from the UFC's point of view, it definitely put a damper on any sort of matchup they were trying to steer him towards with his 2-time kickboxing opponent, Alex Pereira. But he's in a different weight class anyway, and he seems inclined to stay at 185, so he's going to try to bounce back against Potieria. Potieria, 28-year-old Ukrainian, 20-6 overall, 2-4 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of the Contender Series. He's coming in off a loss. He fought back in May at UFC 301, getting guillotined in under a minute by noted ground wizard Michel Pereira. Prior to that, he did have a win over Robert Brychek back in February. So he'll look to get back in the win column. He is not favored to do so, to say the least. There are a couple of jaw-dropping lines on this card. This is one of them. Almeida is minus 410, Potieria plus 300. Wow. I understand why the line is what it is, because yes, the shine is off of Cesar Almeida at this point. He faced off against another decent kickboxer in his weight class. It was a competitive fight, but he lost, and it wasn't a robbery. He is what he is. He's a 36-year-old latecomer to MMA. We just had what felt like a 10-minute discussion during the intro of what makes Alex Pereira special and what's made it so fascinating to follow. Almeida is following along behind and showing us just how hard that is to do. Having said that, I still like him against most fighters in that division if it just comes down to a straight striking match. And against Potieria, I kind of see that coming. Like, if you look at Potieria's record and you're like, well, he's got 9, knockouts. He's got 6 submissions. He's probably pretty well-rounded, but most of his submission wins are really early in his career against really overwhelmed competition. Most of them. In the UFC, he's pretty much been a striker first, and he's pretty much been at the mercy of his opponents. Opponents that wanted to stick it out on the feet and try their luck with him have been able to do so. opponents who wanted the ground game or wanted to try for submissions have been able to do so. I think Almeida gets back on track here, and I think he probably gets back on track in a pretty big way. Potieria is like a hard hitter. He's pretty offensively potent, but he's not great defensively. Like, he's a much better offensive than defensive kickboxer. We saw what happened when he took on an elite kickboxer at light heavyweight when he fought Carlos Ulberg. Obviously, Almeida is a good bit smaller than that. This is a weight class down, but I'm expecting we get something like that. Give me Almeida to get a highlight reel knockout of Potieria, probably sometime late in the first round.
Yeah, I don't know if the buzz is completely off of Almeida. Obviously, he's not going to have the buzz he would have had if he, got a win in his last fight, and and then coming into this card, being on the same card as Alex Pereira, he could have, been undefeated. Would have had a lot more buzz. But I think there's still some things I like. Now, obviously, based on this dude's age, it's harder to like him than you would another decorated kickboxer coming up.
And the UFC hasn't given up on it, or he wouldn't be fighting Potieria on Saturday.
No, yeah, obviously they put him on the same card so they could, when he walks in, and they can say, he's got to win over Alex Pereira, for the people who, don't follow the sport and tune in and go, oh God, who's this guy? And then they, so he has a big moment. There's some buzz there. I think the guy's pretty good. I mean, he's a really good kickboxer, very accurate. His straight right is pretty deadly. He's got crushing power. He has a lot of power because he steps into his shots. He keeps his base underneath him when he lands shots. Though he can load up a little bit. He has some great body work, some of the best body work you'll see. His body work is to kind of slow his opponent down, and then he builds up the volume once they start to get tired. Something I really like that he does. Due to the traditional kickboxing style, he doesn't move much. He kind of stands directly in front of his opponent. He pulls his head straight back. He was dropped by Kovalov, which, he shouldn't. Like, sometimes people hear this decorated kickboxing, they seem like they can't be hurt. That's not true at all, because it's much different defense in MMA than there is in other, striking sports. He'll throw some calf kicks, but they will be naked at times. They don't set him up. He's not going to look the offensive wrestler. He has weak takedown defense, but he likes to defend takedowns with the downward elbows. But I'd say he's inconsistent with his get-up game. Like, Kovalov held him down, but other guys haven't been able to. And he's had multiple fights where he's done a pretty good job to get back up. Potieria, he's a big middleweight. He's a southpaw. He has that like bladed Taekwondo style. I'll give this. He's looked much better at middleweight. He's much faster than he was at light heavyweight. He attacks with combinations, a lot of variety in striking, attacking everywhere. He'll throw a lot of single looping shots, which is concerning. He sets up his shots with feints, which I like. He also does a lot of hand fighting, which he can use his size. That I think bodes well for him. I think he has decent pop in his hands. Due to his Taekwondo style, he keeps his hands low, which is risky, something we're going to talk about Steve Thompson later. He also keeps his chin high in the air. And he showed intelligence going in the Brycek, how do you say his name? Where he kept clinching with the guy every time. It was simply, and this is something I wrote down in the recap show, was simply just to break up the guy's rhythm. And I thought it was really brilliant by Potieria. Like, Brycek never really got going because of that. He'll sneak in some takedowns. He has 6 subs on his record. He did gas against Nikolai Negomariano and Rodolfo Balado, but his cardio looked way better against Brycek. So I think I'm a little high on Potieria than you are. I'm not saying this guy's like a future killer or anything like that, but I think he could sneak in a takedown and make this tougher. I don't think Almeida, with his experience, his age, his one-dimensional style, should be this big of a favorite. I think Almeida's going to get taken down early, but what I do like is when he gets up and the fight starts going, dragging on, he really is. We talked about so many guys before, like not feeling urgency. That's not him. He feels the urgency, and he really turns it up. And I think the body work is going to slowly get to Potieria. I think he's going to slowly break break him down, and then I think he's going to finish him with a shot. Give me Almeida by second round TKO.
Strawweights are up next on the UFC 307 prelims as Marina Rodriguez takes on Iasmin Lucindo. Rodriguez, the 37-year-old Brazilian, is 17-4-2 overall. She's 7-4-2 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. She fought her way well into the top 10 of the strawweight division, maybe to within a fight, at worst 2 fights of a title shot, but she has lost 3 of her last 4 at this point, including her last appearance. That was at UFC 300 back in April, where she dropped a split decision to Jessica Andrade. So she's looking to turn things around, show that even at age 37, she might still have a contender run in her. In order to do so, she'll need to get past Lucindo. 22-year-old Brazilian, 16-5 overall, 3-1 in the UFC. She is on a 3-fight winning streak. She dropped her UFC debut to Yasmin Jauregui. Since then, she has back-to-back wins over Brogan Walker, Poliana Viana, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. The most recent of those, the Kowalkiewicz fight, was at UFC 301 back in May. So she'll be looking to make it 4 in a row. Mint herself, a no longer prospect, but a contender in her own right. She is moderately favored to do so. Lucindo is minus 180. Rodriguez around plus 150 as the underdog. Keith, I'm certain that the UFC is going to exhaust us with graphics on the screen that talk about the winning percentage when one fighter is 15 years older than the other. Yeah. I imagine somebody will mention Roxanne Modafferi as one of the few notable fighters to break that trend.
No one's going to mention Roxanne Modafferi. Only you are really into mentioning Roxanne Modafferi.
I guarantee someone at the desk will. We'll see. Okay. Right. At any rate, will it be worth mentioning, or is age going to take a backseat to youth here? How do you see this one going?
Yeah, this is a really intriguing fight. It's going to be, what does Rodriguez still have left, and what is Lucindo's upside? I mean, this is a big step up in competition. I mean, Rodriguez, I mean, she's still pretty good. Like, she's a good athlete. She's, she hasn't. We talk about losing a lot lately, but she's losing to studs. Like, she's not losing to bums. She's a good athlete. She's long and lengthy. She's big for the weight class. She's a solid striker. She's a bit of a pressure striker with nice volume, attacks with combinations. I like her straight 1-2s down the pipe. She's got good power, big kicking game. I like a step in knees. Defense, she did keep her chin a little too high against Jessica Andrade, which was a little concerning. If she gets to the clinch, she's got a good clinch game. She works really good in there. She's mean. She's good at framing and landing shots. She'll throw some real mean knees inside. She will wrestle a little bit. She's a better grappler than I think she gets credit for. Her defensive wrestling is still inconsistent. Like, there's times I'm gonna go through a laundry list of people, and some of a really long time, but she couldn't stop takedowns from Cynthia Calvillo and Carlos Esparza and Yan Shannon and Verna Jandaroba. But then she stopped takedowns from Mackenzie Dern and Michelle Waterson. So it's not that any of these ones are high level wrestlers, but for women's MMA, some of them are good grapplers that she did stop takedowns from. So she couldn't get off the bottom against Verna Jandaroba, and she couldn't get off the bottom against Jessica Andrade, so she gets taken down as a concern. But she did get up against Michelle Waterson. Michelle Waterson is obviously a much smaller than Jessica Andrade, not height-wise, but strength and everything. She didn't have a submission game, but she did show good submission defense when Mackenzie Dern was able to take her down. She also has taken a lot of damage. She was knocked out by Menelé Mos. Lucindo, I mean, she's only 22 years old, so I love that. I've said it before. She kind of reminds me of Claudia Gadelha. And then I saw her last fight, and I'm like, she might be a little sharper than Claudia, a little more technical. She's a good pocket boxer. She's got some fast hands. She attacks with combinations, throws some mean hooks. They can be a little looping. But I like, though, she'll throw a hook on one side and then cut an angle to set up an open for a counter, which is really, really impressive when her opponent defends shots. She's got good power. She already has 8 TKOs, and she's not even, in her power years. She'll throw some meaningless, spinning attacks out there. It is what it is. She's eaten a lot of shots. Iasmin Haragi landed some big shots on her. She kept moving forward. She will close the distance and get to the clinch and grind there. She's a solid wrestler. She can shoot for takedowns. She also has some foot sweeps. If she gets to fight the ground, she got good top game. She works to advance to a better position. Hard ground and pound. She has 3 submissions on her record already, though she has been subbed twice. I think this is a really intriguing matchup. If you told me, like, what is one fight on the card you're really looking forward to that, like, no one really is going to talk about, there's going to be one of them. I'm high on Rodriguez than most. Like, I'm higher on her than most people are. I still think she might have some, a lot left in the game. But I'm also completely sold on Lucindo. So I think this is a massive step up, Lucindo. I think she's going to pass the test. It's going to be tough. I think Rodriguez is going to have moments. I think Rodriguez can have a lot of success if she gets to the clinch. I still think Lucindo from the outside, her speed, I think she have a speed advantage. I think she can add in some takedowns, which is kind of ironic that she's going to have a speed advantage because that was something that Rodriguez was always like, her rise up the rankings. She's always had such a speed advantage and length advantage on people. I think Lucindo's going to be tested like she's never been before, but I'll say Lucindo wins by decision.
Yeah, I like the breakdown there. The thing for me is Marina Rodriguez still fighting at the same level she was, say, 2.5 years ago, and her recent streak is just the fact that, well, all 3 women that she's lost to are probably top 5, top 6 fighters. Amanda Lemos, Bruna Jandiroba, Jessica Andrade, they're all high-level opponents. Because if she's still the fighter that beat Ribas, that beat Michelle Waterson-Gomez the first time, that beat Dern, that beat Jan, it's a fairly favorable style matchup for her. Like, I agree that Lucindo's gonna be really, really fast compared to what Rodriguez is used to. But generally speaking, shorter women that need to get inside on Rodriguez and don't have much of a threat of the takedown, she tends to do pretty well against. If Lucindo comes in the first round and just picks her up like Lemos did and just slams her on her head, I'm going to know that this was a bad pick. And if either of these women has improved a lot in the last 6 months, it's obviously going to be Lucindo. If one has slipped a lot, it's obviously going to be Rodriguez. But give me Rodriguez in the moderate upset here. Just, she's not a one-shot kill shot artist. Almost nobody at women's strawweight is, but she has a way of putting a lot of damage, again, on kind of shorter women that have to barge forward to really get their game going against her. I mean, obviously, like, look at Michelle Waterson-Gomez, just one of the most horrific, the most horrific beatdown of last year. But, some of her other foes, like, she busted up Amanda Ribas really good after spending a lot of the first round in bottom position. I think she's going to dig deep, get another performance like that. Lucindo will take a little bit of a step back, have to start up another win streak here, but give me Rodriguez to win a decision and for it to be an uncontroversial one, like some rough sledding early on, but Lucindo to be a little bit busted up by the end of this thing. Next up at UFC 307, and at least as the card is constituted as of the beginning of fight week, the top prelim is a welterweight matchup between multiple-time former title challenger Stephen Thompson and Joaquin Buckley. Thompson, the 41-year-old South Carolina native by way of Long Island some of the time, is 17-7-1 overall. He's 12-7-1 in the UFC. As I mentioned, he challenged for the belt more than once, having a razor close 2-fight series with Tyron Woodley back about 7 years ago at this point. He's coming in off a loss. He stepped up to fight the man nobody wants to fight, Shavkat Rakhmonov, last December at UFC 296, got tapped out with just seconds to go in the second round. You have to go back almost 2 full years for his last win, which was a mauling on the feet of Kevin Holland, who fights a little later. on this card. But yeah, 41 years old, has had a few little tiffs with the UFC brass over the last couple years, but here he is. Limited number of fights left. Who knows if this is the last one, but he's going to have to get past Buckley if he wants to go out on a good note. Buckley, 30-year-old Missouri native, is 19-6 overall. He's 9-4 in the UFC. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He dropped a fight to Chris Curtis almost 2 years ago, back at UFC 282. Since then, he has wins over Andre Fialho, Alex Morono, Vicente Luque, and Nursultan Ruzaboyev. The most recent of those, the Ruzaboyev fight, was back in May at the Lewis versus Nascimento fight night card. He will look to make it 5 in a row and complete his matriculation from highlight reel knockout merchant to actual welterweight contender, and he is moderately favored to do so. Buckley is minus 200, Thompson plus 170. There is a time when Joaquin Buckley would have been absolutely made to order for Stephen Thompson. There's a
absolutely.
I mean, there's a time, and it is a couple of years ago, but yeah, there's a time not that long ago that there probably would have been some fun underdog money on Stephen Thompson because Buckley's highlight reel is unmatched, but
sure,
Thompson for a long time was maybe even to a greater extent than some of the other karate specialists we think of, basically untouchable. He had a streak where he could lose a fight, but nobody could lay a finger on him on the field.
Yeah. Can I give you an example of what this fight would have looked like?
Absolutely.
Stephen Thompson, probably, the one I'm thinking of is Stephen Thompson versus Johnny Hendricks.
Oh, yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Buckley's a little faster than Hendricks, but Hendricks obviously had that, much more decorated wrestler and stuff. But yeah. And Hendricks was at the end of his career, but still like that big looping shots trying to end the fight with one shot, and Thompson just sidestepping and landing, sidestepping and landing.
Thompson, too nice to laugh at him while doing it because he's Stephen Thompson. But yeah, completely agree. And man, even the Jake Ellenberger fight before that, where Ellenberger's like, karate, and then he gets spinning wheel kicked. Yeah. A few things have changed since then. Mostly what's changed is that Thompson, despite looking exactly the same for over a decade, is over 40 years of age. People have been able to find his chin and touch him. His takedown defense used to be ultra elite. It's now good. Like the people who are taking him down now, they're very, very good fighters. And specifically, they're very, very good wrestlers. But he's definitely slow to step. Much like, again, Lyoto Machida or somebody. His is a style that, yeah, it's dependent on speed, but it's more dependent on reflexes and reaction, and those do eventually abandon you. Now, the matchup with Buckley is a lot more dangerous because, one, yeah, obviously, Buckley is one of the hardest hitters pound for pound in the sport. He has what, if you want to argue, it's the greatest knockout in MMA history. I might not agree, but I'm not going to laugh at you. And on top of that,
it might be.
It might be.
Yeah.
And he's not a bad offensive wrestler either. We don't see it as often, but he's willing to turn to it. He's got a good shot. I mean, he's not some NCAA Division I champ or anything, but he was a very good high school wrestler. He knows how to shoot a double from the outside. That speed and explosion serve him well when he decides to wrestle. Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards this fight being more lopsided than the odds make it look like. I think the best we get out of this is kind of what we got in Buckley versus Morono, where Morono was just really, really hesitant on the trigger, presumably because he didn't want to forget third grade and have to ask where he was. And at worst, we get some just gnarly highlight reel knockout. It's I mean, it's been a few years since Thompson got starched by Anthony Pettis after more or less styling on him for the first 6 or 7 minutes of the fight. I think we might get something like that here. Thompson will look vintage for a few minutes or maybe even over a round, but Buckley will be patient. He'll explode when it's time, and I think he's going to nuke Thompson. Be kind of a bummer, but especially if Buckley just starts saying some really unfortunate stuff afterwards. But that won't change the win for me. Give me Buckley by a second round knockout, and I think it's going to be one for the highlight reels.
I don't want to see Stephen Thompson knocked out bad. Like,
me either.
You know, I usually root for what's the funnest thing to talk about during the recap, or, but I don't know, like, what a good dude that guy is. The guy almost won the UFC welterweight championship multiple times, and he still was like teaching kids classes and stuff. Like, what a dude. Let me ask you, based on the run that Buckley's on and the way he talks and everything, are you surprised this fight's not on the main card?
I'm slightly surprised it's not on the main card, but you know what? What bumped it down is that they finally came to their senses and moved Jose Aldo to the main card. So,
yeah, to me though, isn't Dolidze and Holland the one that should be off the main card?
I think so. And for all we know, if you're watching this right now, there's a possibility that the UFC will shuffle things before fight night. Because right now on the UFC's own website, it's not split into main card and undercard yet. It's just 12 fights in order. So things might reshuffle, but as of right now, the beginning of fight week, this is the top prelim. And I agree that it sounds more deserving than Dolidze versus Holland.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, you know, the winner of Dolidze versus Holland is not closer to a title shot than, say, Buckley is if he won. You know. Yeah. So I'll start with Steve Thompson. I mean, obviously Thompson, he's one of the best strikers in MMA history. But, you know, the question obviously is you've asked, and I'll echo is, I mean, how long can he do that? The dude's 41 years old. He's, you know, especially his style is based on incredible athleticism. And, you know, he's always been elusive and fluid. He flows so well from both stances. He's fast, you know, slip and rip style. Some of the best head movement we've ever seen. He needs it because he keeps his hand so low. Great lateral movement and cutting angles. Good at causing his opponents to chase him and then just stopping on a dime and landing shots when his opponents are still moving forward. He can like stay on the outside, lull, and then suddenly bliss forward with a combination. He's got great hand speed. Again, you know, question is, has that slipped since the last time we saw him? And I think it slipped overall, but it's still like way better than most people's hand speed. He has that bladed karate stance, so he makes him such a small target. And also, because it's so different, guys kind of tend to overextend and try to land on his head, which is further away than and kind of hidden behind his shoulder and stuff because of that style. He has a fantastic jab. You know, the list of guys he's butchered with that is endless. The issue has kind of always been his output. I mean, he fights and he likes to cruise sometimes, and I think some of that is just that karate style, that point kickboxing style is never a high pressure, high output style. Obviously, his kicks have always been elite. A lot of variety in his kicks. I didn't mention like the one negative about why I would never put Stephen Thompson as the best striker is he was never this land one punch, put you out cold kind of guy. Yeah. And even if he had you hurt, he would like hurt you and step back. And a lot of people say, "Oh, it's because Stephen Thompson's such a nice guy," but I think it's more of, you know, he lacks the killer instinct because the way karate is, you know, you land a shot, they give you a point, you restart. So I think he's just done that so long. It's second nature for him to like once he lands, is take a step back onto his back foot. Going back to his kicks, I mean, very creative hook kicks, side kicks. You kind of never really know what's coming at you. He is open to leg kicks because he's so like wide open. He has that front leg way out there. He's been cracked a lot though. He's been hurt by less decorated strikers. Obviously, he never looks to wrestle. His takedown defense has always been terrible. It's better than it used to be. But like take that much for it. It's like, I don't know, being behind like 6 months on rent instead of being behind a year on rent. Like, okay, like, the eviction's coming soon. The dude's been taken out 13 times in his last 4 fights, so obviously that's concerning. Buckley, obviously, you're talking about his 4-fight win streak. He's a guy who's on the rise. Unmatched athleticism, incredible athlete, absolutely explosive. He moves really well, good footwork. He cuts off the cage fast, good lateral movement. He moves his spot. He moves off the center line while he's throwing, so his opponents don't really kind of counter. Like, he throws something at his head and he's darting this way, darting that way. He's a southpaw with high volume, quick hands, good at landing, getting out of the way before counters. He's got a great straight right. He throws it a lot. He measures with it. He's got a lot of power hooks, great ability to land powerful shots in small spaces. He has serious power too. He bobs and weaves and uses feints really well to kind of set up his knockout shots. Perfect example is what he did to Jordan Wright. He will roll with punches too, to avoid taking the full blunt of a shot. I like that he goes to the body. He'll throw high kicks to like crush, like go back to the Andre Fiallo fight where he just crushed him with a high kick. He's a solid wrestler, explode through your hips kind of guy. He could also grind in the clinch and look for body locks. He got 5 takedowns against Razak Al Hassan. He has been taken down in the past himself, but he showed really improved takedown defense against Albert Duraev. He does need to improve his overall top control, but if he gets on top, he clubs. He's got some mean ground and pound. So I still think there's a possibility that we get a Johnny Hendricks moment where Thompson just pieces him up. It's like Thompson just like, everyone's talking about how fast and explosive Buckley is. Like, I'm Stephen Thompson. Like, I haven't seen this a million times. Guys who are supposed to be faster and more explosive. I don't think he gets the chance. I think I expect Buckley to spring at Thompson, throwing big distance power shots to get Thompson to raise his hands, and then I think he closes this. I don't think Thompson, Buckley might land a big shot, but I think he's going to just explode and just takedown, just continue to rinse and repeat takedowns. I think he wrestles Thompson for 15 minutes. Give me Buckley by decision.
Next up at UFC 307, and at least as the card is constituted as of the beginning of fight week, the main card opener is a middleweight matchup between Roman Dolidze and Kevin Holland. Dolidze, the 36-year-old Georgian, by way of Nevada, is 13-3 overall. He is 7-3 in the UFC. He's 4-3 at middleweight. He fought his first 2 fights in the UFC at light heavyweight, won both of them, then dropped to middleweight where he went 4-3. Made his most recent appearance back in June as a late replacement at light heavyweight. That was the bizarre fight that started out as Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree, then became Hill versus Carlos Ulberg, then Carlos Ulberg versus Anthony Smith, and finally morphed into Smith versus Dolidze by the time all was said and done. At any rate, he beat Smith. He is stepping back in here once again on short notice in for Chris Curtis, but it is at his favored weight class, and it will be against Holland. 31-year-old Texan is 26-11 with 1 no contest overall. He's 13-7 with 1 no contest in the UFC. 9-5 with 1 no contest at middleweight since joining out of season 2 of Dana White's Contender Series. He's coming in off a win. He fought at UFC 302 back in June, where he did all kinds of hideous and terrifying things to Michal Oleksiejczuk's arm. It went down as a technical submission by armbar. Oleksiejczuk got up complaining, but some of the wind was taken out of that by the fact that his arm was flopping like a squid tentacle. It was disgusting. Anyway, Holland looking for his second win in a row. He is moderately favored to get it. Holland is minus 180, Dolidze plus 150. I should be more concerned about Dolidze stepping in on short notice. He's an absolute tank of a human being. I mean, when he got to the UFC, he was a 205-pounder, and he did not look like an obvious candidate to drop to 185. I mean, he just had muscles on top of his muscles. But credit to him. When he decided to drop to 185, he did it the right way, took a few months off, actually retooled his body, and he came back as a guy that's never missed weight at 185. He's lost some fights, but it's not because he gassed out horribly or had just a horrible dehydrated chin. He is Roman Dolidze. He is a 185 pounder for better or for worse. He's been a pleasant surprise. I mean, when he joined the UFC, he hadn't fought at all, I think, in almost 2 years. He was already over 30 years old. I remember thinking, okay, I mean, this is interesting. I'm not sure what we're supposed to get here, but here he is, winning fights. He hasn't strung together quite enough to break into the top 10, but he's beaten some very good fighters. I mean, doing the Scorpion Deathlock on Jack Hermanson and punching him out from back mount will always be the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of Roman Dolidze from here on out.
Scorpion Deathlock. I like
That's
that.
what it looked like.
That was the WCW version. Wasn't the sharpshooter?
One of the ones they had to change the name of. Here, I'm not feeling the line here. I'm favoring Dolidze to beat Holland, and I think it comes down to I trust Roman Dolidze to fight to his best advantage. He is, he's not like the fastest or niftiest striker, but he throws a decent repertoire of punches and kicks. All of it has a ton of power. His kicks are really hard. He doesn't throw in combination as much as he probably should, but he's a serviceable striker, especially offensively. And he doesn't wrestle like a freestyle wrestler, but he's good at getting the fight to the ground when and where he wants to. And often just does it from the clinch, grabs body locks, or just shows people into the cage, changes levels from there where they can't really go anywhere, and just kind of either scoops them up or trips them over and goes to work from there. I trust Roman Dolidze to use his skills and his physical gifts and do what his cornermen say, just fight to his best advantage. I still don't believe that about Holland. And a lot of, what really showed us the ceiling on Holland is when, because he's been bouncing back and forth between 170 and 185 basically the whole time he's been in the UFC. He's authored some impressive highlights in both divisions, but his real ceiling has come when he's fought at 185 and he's fought big, strong guys that are willing to commit to taking him down. Like, it's just his one incredible highlight against Jacare aside, when 185 pounders that are competent wrestlers and top position grapplers have wanted to take Holland down and do him harm that way, or at least get their own chins off the gunnery range for most of a round, it's tended to work. I just think of fights like Holland's fights with Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori, just to mention two that kind of convinced him to go back down to 170 for a while. I picture this being kind of like that. So give me Dolidze to win a decision that is heartening if you're a Roman Dolidze booster, discouraging in a very predictable way if you're a Kevin Holland fan. You might be screaming at your TV as Holland is on his back with Dolidze in his guard, throwing little short shots at his ribs, and Holland is like talking to Dolidze, talking to the ref, clowning and doing everything but getting back up. Give me Dolidze by decision here.
Yeah, I was surprised by the line. I thought Dolidze was going to be the favorite. Like, this is a very intriguing fight because, I think there's definitely that avenue of victory you said with, Holland just being out muscled and everything. Holland, this guy, he wants to fight everybody. He wants to fight anywhere. He'll fight you in the hotel, and but I think he's a character. And because of that, we kind of just take him as a goofball. But he does have a lot of skills that we don't. It's like the Diaz when, you think about like some of the things they did well that they didn't get enough credit for. Like Diaz's like takedowns from the clinch and stuff. Like they don't get enough credit because you just think of them like boxing and jiu-jitsu and not overall just like some craftiness they had. Holland, he's a great athlete. He's long and lengthy. He covers distance very quickly due to his length. I've said this before, like one step, he's halfway across the cage. He's got fast hands. He's accurate. I love his up jab. More power than he gets credited with. He does avoid strikes by rolling with punches, also pulling his head straight back. He's got a great chin. I mean, he's been blasted by some great strikers and just kept coming. Big kicking game. I love his kicks from distance. Got a good high kick. Good at following his kicks and crashing into the pocket to land follow-up shots. He uses his size well in the clinch. I've said it before. When he gets in clinch, he actually looks to box the ears, which I love. He hits some stepping knees in the clinch and uses his length in there to kind of plumb clinch with the knees. Not much of an offensive wrestler, but a very underrated grappler. I mean, you talk about the armbar he hit on Tecia was so slick and mean too. But he caught Tim Means, he caught Michael Gessa in Darce chokes. Not a great defensive wrestler, but to his credit, he looked better against like Chiesa and Chimaev, and I was actually like he didn't stop takedowns from Chimaev, but we talked about before, like he scrambled pretty well. Like he hit a Grammy roll and stuff, which was fun. He does struggle to get off the bottom, especially against guys who are bigger than him, as you mentioned. If he ends up talking, he's got some good ground and pound, but he also was subbed by Chimaev. So it's hard to really get a read on Holland sometimes. Dolidze, obviously. He's huge for the weight class. I mean, he wasn't small. He went to light heavyweight. He wasn't small. So his striking is very raw, though. I think you're like a little bit higher on the feet than I am. On the feet, he looked bad against Marvin Vettori. On the feet, he looked bad against Jack Hermanson. On the feet, now, obviously, he came back on that one. His output in both those fights weren't that good, especially the Hermanson fight. He gave a round away. He makes up for it by being able to crack. Like the guy throws hard hooks, his left hook being his best strike. He loves his overhand right. He does have some really good calf kicks. We saw in that last fight. He also checks leg kicks, which I like. He does really well in the clinch. That's because he's obviously so freaking strong. Really good knees inside. He's a very good wrestler, very good grappler. He's a submission threat. You talk about the calf slicer. He get hit on Hermanson. If he gets on top, he's got mean ground and pound. He still has a big weight cut, which is always concerning with this cardio and zapping it. I see what you're saying, that when you go back and you think about Holland and the way he loses, someone takes him down, holds him down, Derek Brunson style. The avenue for victory to me for Dolidze is obviously so obvious, as you mentioned. I want to disagree with one thing you said, that Dolidze is going to put himself in the position. I kind of think he doesn't do that sometimes. Like, I think about the Hermanson fight, like when he finally took Hermanson down, how amazing he looked, but he was standing on the outside and not doing much, or single striking against Marvin Vettori. I thought Dolidze was going to be like a 2-1 favorite. Instead of, it's almost 2-1 favorite for Holland, you said? Or close to that?
Holland's minus 180. Yeah.
That's even more surprising to me, because I thought Dolidze was going to be a big favorite. And then I thought I was going to have like a wow moment and take Holland. I think I could look like an idiot for taking this pick, but I think Holland's going to avoid some of the takedowns from Dolidze. I think Dolidze is going to get picked apart from range, especially from the outside with kicks. I don't think it's out of the possibility. Like, could Dolidze take him down and dominate? Yeah. But I also don't think it's out of the range that Holland could catch a submission. The dude's slick. Mm-hmm. But I think Holland's going to win decision with kicks from the outside. Give me Holland by decision.
Next up on the UFC 307 main card is a women's bantamweight matchup with some likely immediate title implications as Ketlen Vieira takes on Kayla Harrison. Vieira, the 33-year-old Brazilian, is 14-3 overall. She's 8-3 in the UFC. She is coming into this fight off of a win. That's the good news. The bad news is that the win is over a year ago. She fought most recently at UFC London last July, where she took a unanimous decision over Penny Kianzad. That allowed her to bounce back from her split decision loss to Raquel Pennington last January in what ended up being a title eliminator. She's back again 15 months later and looking to stem the tide of Harrison. 34-year-old Ohio native, 17-1 overall. 1-0 since joining the UFC at the beginning of this year. She made her UFC debut at UFC 300 back in April, where she tapped out Holly Holm early in the second round with a rear naked choke. Prior to that, of course, she was the two-time PFL lightweight champion and three-time finalist. Her only career loss came in the 2022 finals, where she dropped a unanimous decision to Larissa Pacheco. Odds here, I mentioned that there are a couple of wide lines on this card, none wider than this one, as Harrison is minus 700, Vieira plus 450.
Ben, what's Vieira's ranking in the Sherdog rankings?
I'm going to guess she's in the top 4. I'm going to guess
she's giving negative 700. All right. Okay.
It's a bit odd, and keep in mind that when you hear us saying that, you will not find a bigger Kayla Harrison fan than the man sitting over here. I'm 3 inches and 1,800 miles away from me. Yeah. Here's the thing, and I say this at least every couple of weeks. Whenever I'm doing a pre-breakdown of a fight where there's a fighter who's, say, greater than like a 4-1 favorite, I will usually start from the opposite proposition. Okay, if the upset happens, what does it look like? Well, we know what it looks like. We know at least one avenue to victory against Kayla Harrison. Stop the takedowns, punch her in the face. You don't even have to knock her out.
Yeah.
Just, keep punching her in the face. Larissa Pacheco did it. It took her 3 tries, and it took her literally remaking her body into a machine with the sole purpose of beating Kayla Harrison. Like, as much of a Harrison fan as I am, I think it's just absolutely amazing that Pacheco finally got her day in the sun, because she had sacrificed so much. Like, she could have been off somewhere else fighting in a division better suited to her body, better suited to her skill set. But once she started losing to Kayla Harrison, she's like, I'm going to beat this bee. If you look at a picture of Pacheco at the end of 2022 versus the end of 2019, the first time they fought, by the time they had their final meeting, I think Pacheco's lean, in shape walking weight may have been greater than Harrison's. She was so jacked by that point. Yeah, I mean, her neck looked like Brock fucking Lesnar's. Like, unbelievable. Yeah. So there's that. Spend 3 years of your life training to stay on your feet against Kayla Harrison and then punch her up. Problem is, that's not going to be Vieira's route to victory. Like, she's not a nifty striker. She's a bit of a bully and a groundmeister herself. What she has going for her is that she is big. I don't know what the tail of the tape is going to say. I don't know what it's going to look like when they are toe-to-toe in bare feet on ceremonial weigh-ins day, but it's entirely possible that Vieira is going to be taller and have greater reach than Harrison. And Harrison is a big girl. Yeah. And yeah, Vieira blew weight once, but you know what? She blew weight once. It was like 3 years ago, and she hasn't had that problem since. So she's one of those rare people that seems to have fixed that. Just the problem is everything that she does well plays right into Kayla Harrison's hands. It's going to get lost here, and the UFC is not going to mention it unless Vieira wins on Saturday. But Ketlen Vieira fought Raquel Pennington last January. It was a split decision. I thought Vieira won, but and that's worth watching because Vieira versus Pennington, throw Harrison right into that mix as someone who is going to want the same positions and want to get the same things out of them. I think Harrison is going to have there's levels to this moment in a good way. She's she's so strong in the clinch. I love that Harrison's UFC debut and her bantamweight debut was against Holly Holm, because Holm's boxing, her like boxing career aside and her head kick knockouts early in her MMA career aside, her best skill set, especially now that she's in her 40s, is her being a big framed, powerful woman who uses it to be a bully in the clinch and have surprisingly effective offensive wrestling. And Harrison just completely ragdolled her, embarrassed her, like handled, physically bullied a Holm around in a way that nobody had in Holm's entire career. Vieira isn't nearly as shop worn as Holm, but she's somebody that her game plan is similar to the end stage Holm game plan. For Vieira to win this fight, I mean, she could try to just kind of box at mid-range with Harrison and not let Harrison get her hands on her. But Vieira's best performances are usually when she puts her hands on the other woman and either strikes from the clinch or takes them down and mauls them from top position. And just neither of those are going to get her anywhere against Harrison. I'm wary of the line. I'm always wary of lines when they get up past 5-1 or so. But I think stylistically and just in terms of where Harrison is now, where she's probably in her absolute prime, this is going to be a showcase for her. And if she wins and says the right things, who knows? She might be fighting for a title next. But give me Harrison to take the first half of the first round to maybe get a feel for things, and then start tossing Vieira all over the place. I'll take Harrison by second round submission, but second round TKO on the ground would not surprise me either. And I think there'll be some statistical fireworks, like after the first 2 minutes of the fight, Vieira doesn't land a single strike on her.
How bad is the UFC want Julianna Pena and Kayla Harrison to both win on Saturday?
I think the UFC would love that. I mean, Dana White, for whatever reason, personally seems to like Raquel Pennington a lot. Like he said as much. Yeah. But from a promotional standpoint, Pena talks a lot more. If being conventionally attractive and not a lesbian helps, she's got both those things, to an extent that Pennington doesn't. Yeah, like it's a much more sellable fight.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I actually think some of the most probably bad trash talk, but it would be like the loudest moments at press conference. I think they still going to be the loudest at the press conference, but Kayla, I feel like can sell a fight against anybody. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Kayla will talk trash to Raquel when Raquel's a champion, but I think it's just gonna be like kind of how she did with people in the PFL. Like, I'm the best. You got to find out I'm the best, but like in a respectful way. Yeah. But nobody wants that. You know what I mean? And nobody wants Raquel Pennington to be like, yeah, I'm the champion. She's good, but yeah, I think I'm better than her. It's just.
Oh, and Julianna Pena. I mean, she's not Colby Covington or anything, but if you want somebody that might toe the line and maybe step over the line a little bit,
she'll do it. She wants to be the big girl.
And if you're willing to step over the line, trash talking Kayla Harrison, you could get really ugly and you could make her mad.
Yeah.
And here's the thing:
if we're both thinking about the same thing, that'd be really bad.
It'd be horrible. And here's the thing: if Harrison beats Vieira, she's gonna be a 3-1 favorite against whoever comes out of the co-main event. But people would pay to see Harrison smash Julianna Pena as a -300 favorite, where they might not pay to watch her smash Pennington.
And it would be one of the few times where Kayla would be the fan favorite, even though I don't get why people dislike. People hate people who get hype. It's automatically going to have. There's just some negative people in the world that just love tearing people down. Just how it is, and Kayla will be one of those. So, which is why it's so rare for Alex Pereira to have no haters. because he's even won over that crowd. So, anyways, as far as the actual fight in front of us, I mean, dude, I've said it, I'm such a Kayla fan. She looks incredible in her UFC debut. She's talked about being the best fighter in the world for years, and I don't know if she's wrong. She's a southpaw that has a very bob and weave striking style, uses a lot of feints to kind of set up her power shots. Her hand speed isn't the best. It isn't as bad as I thought just because she's a great athlete, but it's still like has a long ways to go. And at her age, it's not going to get better. What I don't like is that she only throws single strikes. She, not many combinations. She also doesn't hit very hard for someone who's built like a bodybuilder. She doesn't have much punching power. She tends to really just throw inaccurate winging shots. I don't like that she drops her hands a little, and she rolls with punches defensively, which I don't hate. I shouldn't say I'm not hate, but it's not my favorite. She will throw kicks, but she doesn't set them off often and leaving her opponents open as a counter. I think her kicks are just more like, I'm an MMA fighter, so I have to throw kicks. I can't immediately just get right to the clinch. But ultimately, that's what she wants to do. She wants to close distance, get to the clinch, use her natural strength. We talked about the girls super jacked. It's even more impressive. You talked about like the Alex Hernandez and seeing it. It's even more impressive when you see her in person. She can just get to the clinch and just control for the entire fight if she wants. She has no issues of wearing down her opponents to clinch. Obviously, she has incredible hip control. We see this anytime someone tries to take her down. I don't follow judo. I mean, my son goes to a judo wrestling and judo school if they combined. But like, I don't pretend to be like a fan of judo. But as far as I know, so don't come at me if you know better. But as far as I know, I think she's like the most decorated judoka in U.S. history. Or if not, she's at least in like U.S. women's history, I believe. I mean, obviously 2-time Olympic gold medalist, elite judo throws, elite judo trips. She can wrestle too. She has some nice entries from the outside. Smother and top control. She looks to advance position on the ground. She's a serious submission threat. She has 7 subs. Her ground and pound is even scarier in the UFC. I mean, she looks like Khabib on the ground. Kayla with elbows is scary. I mean, she said that like in the build up to UFC 300, and then she absolutely delivered what she said. No, she's going against Vieira. The first thing is, it's not Pacheco level, but Vieira's a brute herself. I mean, she's big for the weight class. She can have low volume on the feet sometimes, but she counter strikes. I don't mind her boxing though. I mean, she's pretty technically sound. She doesn't have the fastest hands, but she's kind of technical. Like, she's got a good jab. She's it's an up jab that comes from her hips. She follows through with some tight. I shouldn't say tight. She has like hard power shots, like looping shots, kind of like Fedor style. She has good power. Again, you mentioned like no one really ends fights one punch in the women's division, so they'll take that what it's worth. But she's one of the harder hitters. Defense is an issue. She does back her head straight up. If she gets in close, she does work there. I mean, go back to the Holly Holm fight. You talk about Holly Holm being good in the clinch. She controlled Holly Holm in the clinch, was really impressive. And I mean, it was a really long time ago, but go back to like the Kat Zingano fight where she just absolutely murdered Kat Zingano in the clinch, made Kat Zingano not want to do MMA anymore. She is a judo black belt. I don't think Kayla Harrison has any issue going against judo black belts. I think she has some experience going against judo black belts, but just something to throw out there. She's a good wrestler stuff. She can hit some takedowns from distance. She's gone against good grapplers. Sarah McMahon, Sijara Eubanks, Kat Zingano, Yana Kuniskaya, and she did very well against all of them. She's hard to take down. The only people that take her down is Sarah McMahon and Misha Tate. So Vieira is a serious test for Harrison. It continues to be, she's kind of thrown to the wolves. I mean, only a second fight in the UFC, and this is probably a title shot eliminator. But I'm the biggest Harrison shill. Like, I think she takes Vieira down. I think she just mauls her. Vieira's crafty. She's tough. She's strong. So I think she reaches the second. But I say Harrison locks in a submission in the second round after Vieira gives up her back from eating elbows. Give me Kayla Harrison second round submission.
Third from the top at UFC 307 is a men's bantamweight matchup between Jose Aldo and Mario Bautista. Aldo, the 38-year-old Brazilian, is 32-8 overall. He's 14-7 in the UFC, or 22-7 if you count his WEC tenure with that, which you absolutely should. He is, of course, the former WEC featherweight champ, the former UFC featherweight champ, still a shortlister for the greatest of all time in that division and pound for pound. He is 4-3.
Absolutely.
He is 4-3 since deciding to drop to 135 pounds at age like 33 or 34. It's had a somewhat improbable run, but he's still beating top 10, top 15 quality opponents at age 38 in one of the most unforgiving divisions to fighters that are on their way to 40. He fought most recently at UFC 301 back in May, taking a unanimous decision over Jonathan Martinez. That got him back in the win column after his pretty one-sided loss to now bantamweight champ Merab Dvalishvili a little over 2 years ago. He's back. He's looking for another win. He's either not asking for or not taking any easy outs, because the UFC is matching him with Mario Bautista. 31-year-old Arizona native is 14-2 overall. He's 8-2 in the UFC. He's on a 6-fight win streak. He fought most recently back in January at UFC Fight Night Ankalaev versus Walker, where he took a unanimous decision over Ricky Simon. He'll look to make it 7 in a row, insert himself even further into the bantamweight title picture here. He is moderately favored to get it done. Bautista minus 175, Aldo plus 145. Keith, we are, I think I speak for both of us when I say we're Jose Aldo fans. He's another one where
absolutely.
he's another one where it's tough to find someone with anything bad to say about Jose Aldo.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, like, I've never been a John Morgan, Jordan Breen and Greg Savage type road dog, just covering multiple, like being on the road with UFC year long. But I've covered a pretty good number of events in person. I've met hundreds of fighters in person. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of them. I've seen the way fighters and coaches interact with each other when the lights aren't really on. Which event was it? Oh, it would have been UFC 265 back in 2021, because that was down here in Houston. That's the one where he beat Pedro Munoz.
Yep.
I remember when he walked into the media room, like there's just the bowels of the stadium media room where fighters are doing their, when he walked in, and it wasn't like he had a big entourage. It wasn't like prime Chuck Liddell. It's like him and what's his name from Novo? Yeah. Whose name slips my mind. Thank you. Yeah, it's him and Pedernera's walking in, and everybody in the room sat up a little straighter.
Sure.
And we're talking about a 5'7" dude who's not carrying a belt, and heavyweights are sitting up straighter. Fellow all-time greats are like everyone, like fighters, fans, or fighters, media, other coaches, like just is on their best behavior when Jose Aldo walks into the room. Like, the dude is a legend. Having said that, is he going to pull the same trick here on Bautista? Like, it almost felt like he scared Jonathan Martinez out of throwing punches at him. Does he have another one of those in him? What does this fight end up looking like?
Yeah, I picture like Jose Aldo walking in a room of fighters and getting like the reception of like I picture like Woodstock. You have these obviously epic bands all together and artists, and then like Jimi Hendrix walks in and just everything changes.
Yeah.
Fucking Jimi Hendrix.
I think that's fair. And I mean,
You
I know that you've been around Fedor a few times because
Fedor, that's the one I was thinking of. Yes.
He was hooked on to, Bellator for so many years, and you covered a few of their events, but at least Fedor is a somewhat big dude.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. I don't get starstruck. I don't do that. I mean, because I don't get intimidated talking to people. I've literally interviewed murderers, so it's I interview child molesters. That's what I do. But there is some people that like I'm not scared saying hi, talking to people. I'll never have that. But there's some people like don't say something stupid. Like that's in my head. Like don't make yourself don't stumble on your words. Like I can tend to mumble at times. And Fedor is one of those guys. I've never met Jose Aldo. I'd assume Jose Aldo would be the same way. So yeah. If you don't like Jose Aldo, it's like a certain category of people. Jose Aldo and Shogun and Vanderlei and Anderson Silva and there's a list of it. Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture. Like there's just certain people at MMA if you're not huge fans of. George St. Pierre. I mean, come on. Like, I mean, we can keep going on and on, but you shouldn't be allowed to like. You can pick against Jose Aldo. You could, say I think he's declining, but like say like I never thought he was that good. He was overrated. Oh, he got knocked out by Conor so quickly. Like, how good could he be? You say something stupid like that. Just stop watching MMA. Like, stop it. It's like people who like will like say something controversial to like try to be a hipster and be like. LeBron James not even freaking top 15 basketball player. Like, LeBron James not top 15 ever. Got it. Yeah. I got it. You can think Michael Jordan or whoever you want, Kareem or somebody's had him. Good. But like not top 15. Like, all right, cool. Oh, Tom Brady's a system. Okay. Yeah, cool. Like that's if you say something negative about Jose Aldo. Like he was never that good or something. No, he's not whatever. Anyways, sorry, I know I'm going that rant. Who's going to win? I'll say this. Jose Aldo to be fighting at 38 years old, bantamweight, not 38-year-old heavyweight, bantamweight at this level to even still be, third from the top and be in a competitive fight with another contender is absolutely insane. Like, I think obviously 135 is so stacked and not many people you'd have a good number next to. But if you had to give a percentage of Jose Aldo winning the title, what would you put it at?
Yeah, maybe 5-10%.
Which is
low. Yeah. It's low, but
yeah, exactly. But just even have a percentage to have it not be, zero is so impressive. I mean, because like Nurmagomedov, you'd only put it like 50%, and maybe not even that high. So to have someone like Jose Aldo have any percentage is insane. So obviously he's such a big bantamweight. I still don't know how he makes weight. Remember, and it's funny that you say this is what his 8th bantamweight fight. You said
it is his 8th bantamweight fight.
Yeah, we thought this was going to be a one and done. How stupid is this? Is this going to be when like BJ Penn fought Frankie Edgar at featherweight, and it was like, what is he doing? That's what everybody thought this was going to be with Jose Aldo, and he didn't win the title or anything, but just to be in a position like this is super impressive. He's a pressure counter striker whose boxing is very crisp. Obviously he's got professional boxing experience recently. He's got fast hands, nice snap on his shots. He's got a great jab, nice tight follow-up power shots. His straight right is one of the best punches that he has going. He's probably the best mid-range striker in MMA history. Great body work. Go back to like the Jeremy Stevenson fight, Jeremy Stevens and the Hanato. I always call him Jeremy Stevenson. I'm sorry, Jeremy Stevens and Hanato Moicano fight where he works them with the body. He still has some pop. I mean, just his last fight against Jonathan Martinez, he hurt him a few times in that fight. His output declined in the past, but it has looked much better in his last few fights, especially his last fight against Martinez. I love that he throws like a kick to punch combination, which is so different. Most people throw, that they throw a punch, they follow with kicks. He's got kicks to the body. He has abandoned his leg kicks a little bit, but they've kind of come back somewhat degree. Like, it was a long time. It was like he was the best leg kicker there was, and he just didn't throw kicks anymore. But like, he had success with leg kicks against like Potieria in their fight. I'm still worried about his chin. I mean, he's taken tons of damage over the years, obviously at his age. Like, he's 38, but 38 bantamweight already has like an asterisk next to it. And then he's an old 38. I mean, think about when he became a champion of the wars, the amount of rounds, 5 rounds against Chad Mendez in this fight, and Connor catching him, and the fights against Max Holloway and Volkanovski. Like, the list goes on and on and on. So to be in Marab taking him down as many times, Jan, there's other guys. So obviously I'm worried about his chin just failing him at any time. He's always been a great grappler, but hardly ever used it. But I liked that he took Martinez down. And then earlier I said Tim Means legendary. And I said, I probably shouldn't say legendary. Jose has legendary takedown defense. And I'm using that properly. Mario Bautista, this dude's good though. Like, I just like, we just were swinging on Jose Aldo's nuts for 20 minutes. This guy is a dog, Bautista. He's absolutely fearless. Just marches forward, and he's not worried about being hit. He's a pressure striker with great volume. Go back to the Benito Lopez fight. We just marched forward and just teed off anytime he got close to being able to punch him. He's technically sound, uses a lot of feints and good footwork to keep his distance, and then keep the distance where he's landing, but he's out of range of your counters. He cuts angles really well. He freezes people with feints. I go back like the Brian Keller, who just freezes them with feints. I love his straight right. He slips and looks for uppercuts inside, up close, which is rare. He has some pop. I love his stepping knees. He's got a big kicking game. Great calf kicks. Though he did abandon it against the Ricky Simone fight, he didn't kick nearly as much as I thought he would. Good clinch game. He's a very like underrated wrestler. I mean, he hit Brian Keller with this great foot sweep. He suplexed Guido Cornetti. Like, yeah, these guys are both much lower level than going against a guy like Jose Aldo, but good scramble game. He's got a good top game. He's got 6 subs on his record. He needs to improve his takedown defense, though. Like, Damon Blackshear had success taking him down, Ricky Simone had success taking him down. So I think it's a really hard fight to pick. It comes down to Jose Aldo's, boxing, particularly his how much power he still has and how clean he is versus just the pace and the output of Bautista. I am worried about Aldo's looking old overnight. There might be some major changes recently for him to finding more youth. Take that for what it's worth, but I like Bautista's volume. I hope he doesn't get starstruck, as you said, because we've seen that with people. In fact, I think Jonathan Martinez got a little starstruck. I've really flip-flopped. I think some of it is you have so much respect for Jose Aldo, and you hate being wrong picking fights. Like, you hate doubting the guys. And I feel like I can do that sometimes. Like, I'm kind of like always a little earlier on guys than some people. Like, generally speaking, obviously I've picked guys to, older guys to win, and they've lost. But a lot of times I'll be the guy who will pick a guy like, I think this signs a decline. And man, I hate to do this. I'm gonna go with the Bautista. I'm just sticking with his volume. I think his volume might overwhelm Aldo at times, force him on his back foot, where he's gonna have to counter off his back foot for a majority of the fight. I think it'd still be good for the UFC if Aldo wins. Obviously, I mean, I don't know if it's gonna happen. Give me Bautista by decision.
Here's the thing. Like, I love the breakdown there of their relative skill sets, and by and large, I agree with it. And I feel like we're just back where we were 5 months ago with the Martinez fight, because
I didn't learn anything. That's the worst thing.
I'm with you, because in broad strokes, Martinez and Bautista have a lot of similarities. They're, tall,
they do.
rangy bantamweights.
They look like each other a little bit. They're kind of quiet
like
and unassuming.
I mean, this didn't age well, but I remember saying in advance of that fight that maybe Martinez is going to show what elite leg kicks look like in 2024 MMA versus like 2006 MMA. Mario Bautista is another guy. He is one of the best leg kickers, one of just the best calf and thigh kickers in the UFC right now. In terms of physical attributes, in terms of skills, in terms of wear and tear, Bautista should be the favored fighter here. So should Jonathan Martinez have been. He was, and then he just came out so flat, so gun shy. He himself kind of admitted that he was caught up in the moment. I mean, we just spent several minutes at the beginning of this particular fight preview talking about the mystique that Jose Aldo carries. Now, picture fighting that dude in Rio, which is what Martinez had to do. The difference here is Bautista's fighting them in Salt Lake City, which is about a 10-hour drive from where he trains in Phoenix. He could drive if he wanted to.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
I mean, you're still going to be, toe-to-toe, face-to-face with Jose Aldo all week, but it's not going to sound like the Junesi Arena in Rio de Janeiro when you're walking out and they're just booing and saying, "Ooh, vai morrer." And
it'd be like fighting Ronald McDonald in the freaking McDonald's Playhouse. Like, I wonder why people aren't cheering for you. You're throwing bombs at the freaking clown.
I am banking on Bautista not getting all starry-eyed. I'm banking on Bautista just buckling down and saying, I'm on a 7-fight win streak, but what I'm lacking is a name. A name at this level is literally never going to present itself to me again.
Not like this, yeah.
And give me Bautista to win a competitive decision, but for him to just come out and actually fight a good Mario Bautista fight, and maybe for Jose Aldo to finally look a little slow, a little shop worn, and by the modern standards of the division, even a little bit undersized. I've got Bautista by decision here as well. That brings us to the co-main event of UFC 307, a women's bantamweight title fight between defending champ Raquel Pennington and challenger Julianna Pena. Pennington, the 36-year-old Colorado native, is 16-8 overall. She is 13-5 since joining the UFC out of season 18 of The Ultimate Fighter. She is, of course, your UFC women's bantamweight champ. She won the title, vacant at the time, at UFC 297 back in January with a unanimous decision over Mayura Bueno Silva. This will be her first defense of that title against former champ Pena. 35-year-old Washington State native is 11-5 overall. She is 7-3 since joining the UFC out of that very same 18th season of The Ultimate Fighter. She is coming in off a loss. It was just a little over 2 years ago, and it saw her relinquish the title that she had won from divisional GOAT and women's pound-for-pound GOAT period, Amanda Nunes. It was a pretty lopsided unanimous decision where Nunes exacted a measure of revenge and basically beat the brakes off her after being upset back in 2021 and losing the title to her. Pena has been on the shelf ever since. That's unsurprising. Spending 2 years at a time on the shelf is kind of one of the things that Pena does, but she is back, and she is an underdog in this fight, but not by much. Pennington is minus 160, Pena plus 130.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna flip this one to you. The two women involved, like I said off the top, are doing their best to sell this to us. They're arguing over which one was the mean girl on Tough a decade ago. They're trying to bring some appeal to this. Tell me how you think this fight goes.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I'm watching UFC Paris yesterday, and they do a promo for UFC 307, they did this thing about, there was one was like Clear Roundtree, like the ultimate underdog type thing. And I was like, man, that was actually a pretty good promo. And then they did the Raquel Pennington and Julianna Pena like later on. It might have been first. I can't remember. And they went back to like the house with Julianna Pena doing Raquel Pennington's hair and stuff. And, but like Julianna Pena saying that she's stabbing her in the back and they weren't friends. And she secretly hated each other. They were hanging out. And I was like, dude, the UFC just sold me on Raquel Pennington versus Julianna Pena. I'm like, damn, am I that much? Like, good thing the UFC doesn't sell cars. I'd be driving off with a freaking new Volvo or some shit. I was like, they sold me on Raquel Pennington versus Julianna Pena. I'm actually interested. I'm interested. And let's be honest, they're just going to clinch with each other for 25 minutes straight. Raquel Pennington. So I'm so glad. You know what? I'm so glad she's a UFC champion. It just like always been there. It seems a lot of like the Glover Teixeira championship, except for like no one got excited. But like how everyone on Earth was excited for Glover, but just like somebody we never expect to be champion to always kind of be there. I'm glad that she finished, her career with at least getting the title. She's never been a great athlete, but she had just always made up for being tough and technical and constantly just putting her into the position to win fights. She's a technical striker. Doesn't have the best hands. Definitely not the best hand speed, I should say. But she will move forward and she'll walk through some shots to land some of her own. She's a builder that gets stronger as the fight goes on. She gets in the pocket. She's a decent pocket boxer, nice, tight, got a good left hook. That's her best punch. She's really good at like dipping to her right. I'm sorry, dipping to her left and then countering with her left hook. Sorry, I'm saying dipping to the right and throwing a left hook, kind of getting away off the center line. I don't know why I just messed up on that so bad. But her best work is just getting the chest to chest, grinding against the cage, using her power, her strength, and just annoying her opponents against the cage. She'll foot stomp and shoulder strike, and then she'll drop down to the hips and look for a takedown. She has solid takedown defense herself, and if you put herself in the bad position, she'll grab a great standing guillotine. She'll sub you in the clinch if you leave your neck open, or she'll like counter a takedown. If taken down, she does really well to get back to her feet. She is a submission artist, and she's hard to sub, and cardio helps her. A lot of people get tired in clinch. She don't care about. She'll get tired in clinch too, but she has the mentality like she knows that you're also getting tired, and she can win there. Julianna Pena is very similar. She's also a minus athlete. She isn't the most technical striker. She doesn't have the best hand speed. Like a lot of things I'm saying about Raquel Pennington. She likes to throw it on the pocket and hold her ground. Say what you want. She did well against Amanda Nunes in their first fight, but just holding her ground, taking the beating, and keep coming. We even saw in the second Nunes fight when Nunes was obviously way cleaner and craftier, but Pena still took a beating and still kept swinging for the fences. She's got to take a beating because she's very hittable. She likes to just kind of rush forward and eat shots. She also wants to get the clinch, and she wants to grind in there, and she tie her opponents out. She did that Nunes in their first fight. She'll look for body lock takedowns from the clinch. If she gets on top, she's got a good top game. She's a submission threat. I do think her overall grappling's a little overrated, but she did sub Nunes in their first fight, and it was in. They'll talk about such a submission. It was like her first fight since tough that she got a submission, but some of that was she got the submission, but it was also like tired out Nunes and mentally breaking her, I think, a little bit. She struggles to get off the bottom. She'll toss off a bunch of subs off her back, but she's not that good at it. And her submission defense isn't as good as someone who's known for their grappling. It is. I mean, Valentina Shevchenko subbed her, which at that time, Shevchenko was still known as a decorated striker and not the grappler that we know that she is. But she also was submitted by Jermaine Durandamy, which is a really bad loss. But she has a good cardio to go all 25 minutes. These girls are so similar. I think they're both overachievers who have had limited athletic ability. They both like to throw out in the pocket. They both like to clinch. They both like to grind. I'm really intrigued on who wins these positions. I think the line is way off. Like, I can't believe, like, you mentioned how close it is. And then you said, I think, what did you say? Pennington's like negative 165?
160, yeah.
Oh, negative 160. I'm like, well, why isn't this like negative 105? Because to me, like, when you break down their skill sets, you're really guessing on who's going to be better at what both people do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And this is simply a guess. I don't know. I've never like arm wrestled these girls or had a bench press competition with them. I just think if they did, Pennington wins. Like, I'm just guessing that she's stronger than Pena. So I'm going to guess that they both get to the position. I think both going to have moments where they're pressing each other against the cage and fighting and underhooking and grinding and trying to land elbows in close and shoulder shrugs. I just think Pennington's going to have more time controlling the clinch. Maybe she gets a takedown or two. Give him Pennington to keep the title, win a decision, go all 25 minutes in a fight that the fans are going to absolutely hate.
Well, I guess we'll at least see how well they travel from Denver to Salt Lake if there's any cheering section for it all. But I like that you pointed out the similarities between them, because they've become very similar fighters in broad strokes. I think Pena, once upon a time, was an above average athlete for the division. I went back and watched some of her, like, not pre-tough, but like some of her first couple fights out of tough. And physically, she was a little different than she is now. I don't know if it's just the injuries upon injuries that have really sapped that, but I agree that by right now and by current standards, they're both minus athletes for the division, but nonetheless, they're the two fighting for the belt. So that shows what overachieving can get for you. Like, nobody's gonna talk about it this way because Pena seems to have like kind of an odious personality that fans find divisive, but she's a little bit of a what if story, because she's missed whole years, sometimes 2 years at a time. Like, it's kind of wild that Pennington and Pena joined the UFC at the same time, and one of them has 10 fights and one has 18. But like, when she's been around and she's been healthy, Pena's only really lost to very, very good fighters. At this point,
she's a good commentator too, by the way. I think she's very good at commentating. And that's way, I know that was way off topic, but sorry.
I've only heard her as a Spanish commentator, but she was terrible. But maybe she's better in
English. No, she did Combate and stuff. Yeah,
like I heard her doing Spanish for Combate. Was like her and Jorge Masvidal was a special guest, and she wasn't great, but I can believe, like, she's pretty good.
I thought she's good, but I'm nicer than you are, Ben.
I speak better Spanish than you do.
That's true.
Anyway, I don't have too much to add to the actual breakdown, because I agree. These are two women that both share the same wheelhouse. It's not even going to be a clash of styles where one woman wants it on the feet, one wants it on the ground, or one wants it in the phone booth, the other wants it at outside kickboxing distance. They both are going to rush to the exact same positions. And I have the feeling it's going to be very competitive from round to round. Like, this could be one where Pennington wins 49-46, but each of the individual rounds was very close. I don't think it'll have a whole lot of rewatch value. I'm with you that there's probably going to be a little booing and wooing going on, but give me Pennington to retain by decision as well. I'm with you on that one. With that, we arrive at the main event of UFC 307, a light heavyweight title fight between defending champ Alex Pereira and challenger Khalil Roundtree Jr. Pereira, the 37-year-old Brazilian by way of Connecticut, is 11-2 overall. He's 8-1 in the UFC. He is 4-0 since moving up from 185 to 205 pounds. In that time, he has wins over Jan Blachowicz, Yuri Prochazka, Jamal Hill, and in the rematch over Prochazka in his most recent appearance at UFC 303 this June, where he knocked him out early in the second round with a head kick. There had been some conflicting noises about who he was going to defend against next. Some people expected or hoped that it would be Magomed Ankalaev, who is sitting on a very lengthy unbeaten streak, but it ended up being Khalil Rountree Jr. 34-year-old fighting out of Las Vegas is 13-5 with 1 no contest overall. He is 9-5 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of season 23 of The Ultimate Fighter. He is on a 5-fight win streak. Since his loss to Marcin Prachnio a little over 3.5 years ago, he has wins over Modestas Bukauskas, Carl Roberson, Dustin Jacoby, Chris Dawkins, and Anthony Smith. The most recent of those, the Smith fight, was at UFC Fight Night Song versus Gutierrez back in December. He is stepping in here for his title shot. He is not favored to win. Pereira is a big favorite. He is minus 500, Rountree plus 375. Again, if we got a 5-1 favorite, I'm starting from the opposite side. If we get an upset, what does it look like? Well, it looks like Rountree catching Pereira flush on the chin and knocking him out. That's what it looks like. It's not anybody's most likely outcome, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Pereira is a former world champion kickboxer. He is a current world champion mixed martial artist, but throughout his entire career, his greatness has never been built on being untouchable. He got knocked out in kickboxing. He's been knocked out in MMA. Even in his wins, he's been caught cleanly. He's been hurt. He's been on the ropes. He's now 37 years old, has spent literally over half his life, getting punched and kicked. Certainly someone that hits as hard as Rountree, if he catches him clean, anything can happen. But that's about it. Like, who are the people that have, who's beaten Pereira in MMA, not counting his debut where he got put on the ground by a welterweight and taken to school? It's Israel Adesanya, who caught him, with just a pinpoint combination. And that's about it, man. Like, that's Rountree's route to victory. You would think Rountree, being as athletic as he is, being as powerful as he is, might throw in a wrinkle and try to take Pereira down. I mean, Rountree has 15 fights in the UFC and 0 takedowns.
Yeah.
That's basically all you need to know. And here's the thing. Rountree, there are extremely admirable things about Khalil Rountree. I'm sure you'll hear on UFC Embedded this week that Rountree used to weigh over 300 pounds and he started doing kickboxing just to get in shape and then went to a career from that. Like, good for Rountree, because there are plenty of fighters that you can say that about. Their fighters who will very frankly tell you, yeah, I was 100 pounds overweight. I got into training just to get in better shape. But usually you can tell. Like, you look at Martin Budai, with all due respect to my teacher, you look at Alex Morono, you look at Betch Correa, and then you look at Rountree. It's like, if you had any fat on you, where the hell was it? Like, the guy looks like he was made by a sculptor. But so, I mean, that's extremely admirable. And that's before he even got into, actually being a pro fighter. Then he has improved enormously and measurably since he joined the UFC 7 or 8 years ago. Like, he lost his first 2 fights in the UFC, like the cast member fight against Andrew Sanchez, and then got tapped out by Tyson Pedro. I am very comfortable saying that he would absolutely murk either of those guys right now.
Oh, 100%.
Like, I remember when he fought Eric Anders, and that's 5 years ago. And I remember thinking, this is practically a mirror match. These are 2 athletes who list themselves as kickboxers, and Rountree outclassed Anders so badly. He was the first fighter I ever saw go do the 6-month training camp in Thailand and actually come back as a better Muay Thai striker. Like it went from being the fighter vacation / the fighter evade USADA for 6 months thing. He actually came back with better Muay Thai skills. Like who knew that could happen? I'm glad Roundtree is getting this shot. He's 34. The good times won't last forever. Even if he's not the most deserving guy, you know what? The most deserving guy is boring as hell to watch fight and has trouble getting a visa to fight outside of Abu Dhabi. That guy doesn't get to dictate terms to Alex Pereira. If it's Khalil Roundtree, great. Yeah. Having said that, yeah, this is a terrible matchup for Roundtree. If you want to kickbox with Alex Pereira without the threat of the takedown, you're in for some rough sledding.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. Roundtree throws really good leg kicks. Pereira is good at everything that you would want in a kickboxer, but he's inconsistent at how well he actually checks them versus just trying to counter them or kick back. So maybe Roundtree can make some hay that way. That's all. Maybe he can try a takedown for the first time. I don't know, but all of that, none of those things are going to get him the win over Pereira. Those are all just kind of distractions to try to catch the champ in a moment of inattention and land the best like overhand left of his career. It could happen. I think minus 500 Pereira sounds about right for the likelihood of it happening, and I'm certainly not banking on it. And unfortunately, Roundtree is going to have to go first. He's going to be the shorter guy with the shorter reach. I don't think he's going to make it to the final horn. Roundtree puts on a valiant effort, maybe even catches Pereira, hurts him, rocks him at some point, but the damage is going to start toting up on him, and eventually he's going to run into something horrendous. Give me Pereira by third round knockout in a fight where he's just gradually getting further and further ahead, and he catches Roundtree hurt, tired, or desperate, or all of the above, and just flatlines him. Left hook again.
Yeah, I like what you said about like Pereira's. Yeah, he hasn't been that light heavyweight champion for long, but what he's done in the moments he's had, and going back to obviously when he was middleweight and beating Izzy, but also just UFC 300 and International Fight Week and willing to step up and willing to fight in 2 different divisions and just being the guy that's he's just like the ultimate gamer. Yeah, like he sets his time. If you're not ready, next guy. Like I agree with you. Like usually I don't feel that way about a lot of champions. I feel like it's this is when it should be, and if you're not ready, tough to be you. And,
like when Tyron Woodley went from being the chosen one to being the choosy one. Like
nice, I like that. So I've seen Esparza a couple of times, and I've said this before. I'm not gonna hop on it. The dude is so freaking big. He's such a massive light heavy, which is so crazy that he used to fight at middleweight. I mean, and
it makes it extra crazy when he's going to be fighting for the interim heavyweight title in November at Madison Square Garden, right? He's going to step up on short notice.
Yeah, no shit, and not be undersized at all. The dude's so freakishly big. Obviously, you mentioned he's an elite striker. I like to live in the moment, but he's possibly the greatest striker in MMA history. I don't think when we do a list years from now, we'll give him the top spot because he did get into the sport a little later. But what he's done in such a short time is just unbelievable. Dude's got fast hand. He's the definition of no tells. Everything is short, tight. You don't see it coming. Accurate, insanely explosive. Maybe the biggest non-heavyweight puncher ever. He just touches and the lights are out. I've said this before about him. He doesn't have to be accurate. He's got that Francis Ngannou just kind of graze you and then you hit next minute you're unconscious style. He has so much power because he keeps his base underneath him. I love his jab to the belly. Like he started doing that a lot in his last fight.
Oh, dude, that would end my night. One jab to the belly. I'm out. I'm shitting my pants. Like, fight over. Yeah.
I would see him close his fist and I'd shit my pants. Never mind him actually throwing the punch.
Yeah.
You know? His calf kicks are great. I mean, they just seem so effortlessly. I'm saying it wrong. This is why Ben's the polished one. Ben's a polished one when he messes up. He never messes up, and when he does, he edits it out. So anyways, he hurt Adesanya with kicks in their first MMA fight. That Adesanya was saying like that's what actually hurt him more than the punches. He battered Yuri's legs. Then he goes to other parts of the body, which I love. Like he goes Mirko Cro Cop switch high kick on Prohaska. He was battering his body in the last fight with kicks. He is hittable though. I'll give him that. My notes are out of order. He does keep his chin a little high in the air. He pulls his head straight back. But he did something in the last fight that I was like, oh man, it's I feel like I understand, generally speaking, a lot of things that are going on. I don't catch everything. I'm not like a freaking expert. I don't pretend to be. But I feel like I have a general understanding of some of the tricks and traps. But then you see certain guys and you get a glimpse of what they're doing. And you're like, oh my God, this guy's knowledge is so much higher. And it's not just about being quick twitch and being more explosive and being more like, being a better athlete. None of that. It's all of that and a mind that understands the nuances of striking that I'll never understand. So in his last fight, he retreated, but he cut an angle on his retreat, which set up like this perfect counter shot that dropped Yuri at the buzzer in the very first round of the second fight. And I'm like, dude, this guy is so sharp. I do worry about his durability due to his long kickboxing run and being knocked dead by Adesanya in the second fight, and just this is a sport that happens quickly with small gloves and stuff. So I am worried about that, but obviously another avenue of victory is close the distance, but he's been using his size really well in the clinch. He kind of like hangs over his opponent to kind of make them tire. He's got good mean knees inside. He doesn't really wrestle, but we've seen these tons of training videos of him like looking for takedowns and learning takedowns, which I wouldn't be surprised if he goes for a takedown just to keep someone honest once. His takedown defense has been an issue, but it's looking better recently. And if he's taken down, he has this Derek Lewis type strategy to get up where he'll wait, and then he explodes and he's big and he's strong. That he can get you off balance for a second or not positioned right, he can get up. Cardio has been an issue in the past. I mean, he slowed down against Jan Blachowicz in their fight, but no one has been able to press him in that kind of pace to slow him down. Now, Roundtree, obviously, you mentioned he's an explosive athlete. He's extremely athletic, southpaw, moves well. He's light on his feet. He's got some quick hands. He's got some really big punching power. He throws some of the scariest whipping shots ever. Like when he starts throwing those hooks, he's looking to knock into next week. But when he cleans it up, I like it even better. He's got an absolute deadly straight left hand. He's good at measuring people for those shots. He's got a good kicking game, crushing kicks to the body and liver. He has a meanness. So I will always, one of my most memorable moments in MMA is going all the way back to the Tough House. And I know this is like, why you bring that up? But I'm just talking about his meanness. When he had an opponent down, he was on top, and he jumps up and just to kick the guy in the ribs and jump back down. It was like, that is one of the nastiest things. I'll never forget that. That is going to be in my like I have some notes I put on fighters. That's going to be my clear Roundtree notes forever because it was such a badass thing to do. Now, you mentioned the dude cannot wrestle. I mean, you mentioned all the fights he's done in UFC, he's never got a takedown. It's like, dude, my son has a better chance getting a takedown against Bo Nickel than Roundtree does at getting a takedown in the UFC. I think some people were getting scared I wasn't getting my Bo Nickel reference in. But yeah. he can focus on his defensive wrestling, and I think he has. I mean, he stopped takedown attempts from Chris Dawkins in that fight, but I still wouldn't categorize him as a even bad wrestler. I mean, the guy is terrible on the ground. He struggles to get off the bottom. Go back to like Iwan Kuchalaba smashing him with elbows. People can be upset with Roundtree getting a title shot, and some of that is due to his positive test and when he was supposed to fight Jamal Hill and then getting pulled from the fight and getting a title shot. That's a strong argument. That's the best argument for he shouldn't get a title shot. You shouldn't get rewarded. You get pulled from a fight and you get into a bigger fight. Yes, that's a strong argument. I agree with that argument. Some of it could be because Ankalaev is the number one contender in the world. Well, you know what? I don't have to tell you. Like, I think Ankalaev deserves a title shot. Yeah. It is what it is. He'll eventually get it. But I'll say this. Roundtree has the ability to knock anybody out. He has serious power, and Pereira's been caught. If we think about, is he probably the less deserving title challenger in a really long time? Yeah. I mean, he's on a good run, don't get me wrong. So it's not like, they just, threw all the bunch of names at a hat and he pulled his name out. Like he's been on a run. But of the people, I'm not going to say he's the best striker that Pena has faced, because that's not true, but the power he has the same chances of knocking out Pena than Yuri had and Izzy had. The Roundtree's power is unmatched. So yeah. I'm trying to talk myself into a Roundtree, because if it happens, I could say, I told you guys. And there's a little bit of that, because in this sport, we've seen one punch can land and end the fight, and Roundtree has that. That said, I'm still taking Pereira. I mean, what I expect him to do, I expect Pereira to avoid those big shots, roll with the punches, and then just start kicking the legs of Roundtree and kicking him again and kicking him again. Maybe go to the body, maybe hurt him to the body, or maybe hurt him to the legs. I keep picturing Roundtree like limping around, like hopping on one foot, like when the guy clearly shows that his legs are done. And then I expect Pereira to get to the point where it's you're thinking about the legs so much, you forgot about my most deadliest, dangerous thing. And I just keep picturing that left hook. And I'm going to say it's going to be it's becoming like the finishing move for him. If we go back to 1990s wrestling style, it is the sharpshooter. It's this. Who did the score? Was that Sting, right? Scorpion Death Dog? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, I thought so. The left hook is Pereira's finisher. It's the Hulk Hogan leg drop, and I say he just puts Roundtree out cold. Second round knockout.
All right. That's your pick for the main event, and this has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 307, Pereira versus Roundtree. I've been Ben. He's been Keith. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of our previews, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We do our best to bring you a mix of in-depth analysis and occasional historic or humorous asides that we think is unique in this industry. Please do like, subscribe. Neither of those things cost you anything. They make our bosses happy and allow us to keep bringing you this content free of charge. Drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We would love to hear your take on these fights. If you think we missed any obvious upset value, let us know. If you're right and we're wrong, we will give you all of your flowers on the recap. But you have to join us on the recap for that. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page right after the main event. Keith takes the captain's chair. We go down all, in this case, 12 of these fights, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something, talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking with you. The live chat on the YouTube page is open that whole time. So we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.
To the sea. Make your bed of fairy tales while you're